The night has settled in gently. You've arrived at just the right time, not too late, not too early. You and I sit here together in wordless stillness, breathing in, breathing out slowly, like the breath of the earth and sky. If this moment brings you even a little peace, please leave a silent dot by pressing follow. Where are you listening from? And what time is it inside your heart? Now dim the lights, let the darkness gently embrace you, and step lightly into the dream. The wooden gate of the monastery swings open with a soft creak. You step inside. The gravel path beneath your feet crunches gently with each movement. The air is cool, laced with the scent of pine, and something older, the kind of stillness that carries centuries in its silence. A monk appears, robes whispering as he walks. He says nothing at first, just bows. Then softly, "You've come here asking why." You hesitate. Not because the question is untrue, but because it has lived inside you longer than you can remember. Why things happen the way they do. Why loss comes. Why joy slips away. Why the road is often twisted when the heart longs for straightness. The monk continues. Perhaps the answer isn't far away. Perhaps it's in the way you sit, the way you breathe, the way the wind moves the chimes. You hear them now, the chimes hanging from the temple eaves. They do not try to sound beautiful. They do not resist the wind. They simply respond. And in that response, they sing. There's a story the monks tell here of a novice who asked, "Why did I lose what I loved?" The teacher did not answer. Instead, he placed a cup in the novice's hands and said, "Hold it, but know it is already broken." At first, the novice thought this was cruel, but over time he saw the cup's impermanence made every sip more precious. Its fragility was not punishment. It was a teaching. So it is with your life. The moments that come, even those wrapped in pain, come with a reason you may not yet see. Not a reason written in the sky. Not a reason spoken in words. But a reason that unfolds softly like the petals of a lotus opening in the dark. The monk gestures for you to sit beside him. You do. You feel the weight of your body, the steadiness of the ground beneath you, the vast space around you. Nothing is required. Nothing must be fixed. Only this to be here fully without needing the answers to come first. The wind moves again. The chimes sing. And for a moment, you feel the beginning of peace, not because everything makes sense, but because for the first time it doesn't have to. If everything happens for a reason, what if the reason is already unfolding inside this breath? The monk leads you down a narrow path toward a small wooden room nestled between two willow trees. The branches sway slowly, as if bowing with each breath of wind. You step inside. It's simple: one cushion, one low table, one ceramic cup. The monk sits and gestures for you to do the same. He reaches behind him and brings out a teacup, delicate, finely made, but with a visible crack running through its side. He sets it between you both, not as something broken, but as something sacred. "This is my favorite cup," he says. "Do you see the crack?" You nod. It happened years ago. I dropped it one morning after waking. At first I was sad. I nearly threw it away. But then I realized the crack didn't ruin the cup. It revealed something. He pours tea into it slowly. The liquid doesn't leak. The cup still holds what it is meant to hold. You watch the steam rise, curling gently into the hush of the room. There's a reason for the crack, he says. Not a punishment, not a flaw, just a part of its story. In Zen, there's a story of a student who broke a master's favorite bowl. In fear, he confessed. The master simply said, "Now it is complete." You look again at the cup. You begin to see the beauty in it, not despite the crack, but because of it. The way the light touches the edge of the fracture. The way it tells a story without needing to speak. Sometimes things don't fall apart because something is wrong. Sometimes they fall apart so that something softer can begin. The monk hands you the cup now. It's warm in your hands, whole in its imperfection, useful, beautiful, and perhaps so are you. You take a sip. The tea is neither bitter nor sweet. It is clear, present. Exactly what it is and nothing more. The monk smiles softly. Everything happens for a reason, he says. But it may take a crack to let you see it. If even a broken cup can still offer warmth. What part of your story have you mistaken for failure when it may be the reason you are now awake? You step back outside the teacup, still warm in your hands. The sky is beginning to change. Clouds drift like slow thoughts across a canvas of deepening blue. The gravel beneath your feet shifts with each step, but the ground remains solid. The monk walks beside you in silence, guiding you toward a small path that winds away from the temple. It curves gently into the forest, half hidden by overgrown grass and fallen pine needles. It doesn't look like the right way. It doesn't even look like a way at all. You hesitate. The monk notices and simply says, "Sometimes the path begins only when you walk it." He continues on, and you follow. The trees lean inward as if listening. Birdsong flickers through the branches, but no sound lingers long. The air smells of moss, wood, and something else, change perhaps. As you walk, you remember times in your life when the path vanished. When the road you thought you were meant to take disappeared or twisted unexpectedly. When you were left standing in uncertainty, wondering where you were going or whether you were going anywhere at all. You ask the monk, "What if I've gone the wrong way?" He smiles without stopping. Wrong ways still lead somewhere. He tells you the tale of a pilgrim who journeyed for years in search of a sacred mountain. After taking a wrong turn, she found herself in a village that was not on any map. There, she met a farmer who spoke one sentence that changed her life. She never reached the mountain, but she no longer needed to. You see, the monk says not every step is meant to take you forward. Some are meant to bring you inward. You walk a little slower now, feeling the ground with each footfall. The path isn't marked. There are no signs. But there is rhythm. There is trust. And that too is a path. In Buddhism, the teachings often remind us that life is not about arriving. It is about walking. The present moment is not a checkpoint. It is the journey itself. You stop for a moment and look around. The light through the trees dances gently on the earth. There is no destination, no rush, just this breath, this step, this now. If the path only appears beneath your feet, will you walk it even without knowing where it leads? The forest opens slightly, revealing a clearing where the grass glistens with moisture. The clouds overhead have thickened, and soon the first drop of rain touches your forehead, cool and soft, like a fingertip of the sky. You and the monk continue walking without haste. The rain comes slowly at first, then gathers into a steady rhythm. Not harsh, not heavy. Just enough to darken the bark of the trees and deepen the smell of the earth. You think to pull your robe tighter to rush ahead, but the monk simply tilts his face upward and lets the rain touch him. There is a reason for this too, he says gently, almost smiling. Rain falls where it must. You walk on slower now. Each drop becomes a drumbeat on your shoulders, your arms, your open palms. There is a story in the temple, one they tell only when it rains. A young monk, tired of his burdens and mistakes, once asked the abbot, "Why does suffering come to me again and again?" The abbot led him into the rain and asked, "Do you feel the drops?" "Yes," the monk said. "Do they fall because of you?" "No." "Then why do they touch you?" The monk hesitated. "Because I am here." The abbot nodded, "And so is the rain." "You stop walking now and close your eyes." Yes, you have known sorrow. You have known ache and uncertainty. But not because you were wrong. Not because you failed. Because you were here. Alive. Present beneath the sky. Some things must fall. Some things must cleanse. The rain does not punish the soil, it feeds it. The monk places a hand on your shoulder. Even this, he says, is a blessing in disguise. You breathe. The air smells clean. The leaves shimmer with droplets like stars caught in daylight. And you begin to understand, not as a thought, but as a knowing in the bones. There is no mistake in the sky's turning. No cruelty in the rain. Only nourishment that may not yet feel like kindness. The path continues, and so do you. So let the rain fall. Let it soften you. Let it be part of the unfolding. If the sky does not ask your permission to weep, can you learn to welcome what comes to cleanse you? The rain has passed. Only a fine mist remains clinging gently to the air like breath not yet exhaled. The path begins to level, and ahead through the trees, you see a wooden structure, a gate. It stands open, not grand or imposing, but quiet. Worn with age, softened by time. Moss gathers along its lower edges, and wildflowers have crept in at its base. The monk slows beside you. This gate, he says, has been here longer than I have. It opens for everyone. And still, some never pass through. You stop before it. There is no lock, no wall. Nothing barring you except perhaps the mind's quiet doubt. You reach out and place your hand on the old wood. It is warm from the morning sun that now breaks through the thinning clouds. Why does it feel like something waits on the other side, you ask? The monk replies, because you are ready to see what's always been there. You step forward, and with that one step, everything softens, not because the world changes, but because something inside loosens. A grip, an old fear, a question that no longer needs answering. There's a story of a traveler who who walked thousands of miles searching for truth. He passed countless gates, each one different, each one open, but he never entered, always hesitating, always asking, "What if I'm not ready?" One day, tired and dust-covered, he sat down before yet another gate. And in his stillness, he finally saw the gate was not a test. It was an invitation. You look back at the gate now already behind you, and you realize it didn't open. It had always been open. You only needed to walk through. In Buddhism, we are reminded again and again, the door to peace is never closed. It is the mind that imagines walls and the heart that must remember how to walk. You walk further into the clearing. The world feels larger, not because it has changed, but because you have. If the gate was never locked, what else have you been waiting for permission to enter? A single leaf drifts down in front of you, slow, weightless, caught in the quiet spiral between earth and sky. You watch it fall, turning gently, until it lands without sound on the soft moss beside the path. The monk kneels beside it, gazing at the leaf like one might read a sacred scroll. "Some people fear endings," he says softly, "but not the leaf." You crouch beside him. The leaf is delicate, veined with the memory of green now turned to amber. It is no longer reaching for light, no longer clinging to its branch. It has let go, and in doing so, it has begun something new. There's a teaching here, he continues, one older than language. In the temple, they tell a story about a novice who wept each autumn watching the trees shed their colors. He saw it as lost beauty, fading life, retreating. But his teacher said, "Do not mourn the leaf. It does not fall in despair. It falls in freedom." You look up. All around you, the forest is changing. Leaves drift through the air like silent prayers. Nothing rushes. Nothing resists. The monk stands and speaks again. When a leaf falls, it returns to the earth. And from that earth, life begins again. This is the cycle not just of nature, but of everything. Of joy, of love, of sorrow, of self. Everything that comes will one day go. And everything that goes makes room for something new to come through. You step forward and feel the leaves beneath your feet, not dead, but woven into the very ground that holds you. Letting go is not falling apart. It is falling into place. There is a reason for each release, though the reason may not be revealed in words. Sometimes the answer arrives only when you stop asking and simply feel what is left behind. If the leaf does not resist the wind, what might happen if you too surrendered to the season you're in? You walk quietly now, the sound of your own breath weaving with the breeze. The path bends slightly, leading to a stone bench beneath a crooked pine. There a younger monk sits with his head bowed, hands clasped in silence. You approach, but he doesn't look up. Not out of rudeness, but reverence. He is listening not to words, but to something deeper. You sit beside him. Still he says nothing. And somehow it's enough. You glance at him, then at the trees, then at the sky. Stillness settles over everything like a blanket drawn gently across the body of the world. Finally you speak. Why do things hurt so much sometimes? The monk doesn't answer. Not with words. Not right away. Instead, he exhales slowly, and picks up a small stone from the ground. He places it in your palm. It's cool, smooth, utterly ordinary. You wait for the teaching, but none comes, only silence. After a long while, he whispers, "This stone has been shaped by water and time." You nod. It never asked why. There's a story told here about a student who asked his master a dozen questions in one breath, about loss, purpose, pain, and fate. The master only smiled and took him to the river. They stood in the water for hours without speaking. When the student finally asked, "What am I supposed to see?" the master replied, "What you were too busy asking to feel." Silence is not absence. It is an answer deeper than language. You feel it now, how much space opens when you stop trying to explain the ache. How sometimes things hurt, not because you did something wrong, but because something within you is growing wider, softer, more whole. The monk still holds nothing but presence. It's more than enough. And maybe, just maybe, the reason things hurt is not because they are wrong, but because they are real. If silence can hold sorrow without breaking, can you sit with your pain not to solve it, but to honor it? You and the monk reach a bend in the path where a massive stone rests. It's not carved, not placed just there, immovable, half sunk into the earth, like a memory too old to name. He stops and places a palm gently on the surface. "Try to move it," he says softly. You push. It doesn't budge. He watches you strain for a moment, then speaks again. This is how we treat the past. We try to move what does not wish to move. We think it must be changed before we can rest. You sit beside the rock, breathing heavily. The stone says nothing, but it teaches. There is a reason for this stone too, the monk says. Not everything is meant to shift. Some things exist simply to be seen. He tells you the story of a monk who spent 10 years trying to forget a single painful memory. When he finally gave up, he stopped fighting it, and the memory softened, lost its edges, and became just another part of the landscape. The rock is not your enemy. It is your teacher. It is still, unapologetic, honest, and when you stop trying to move it, it stops being a weight. It becomes a place to lean against. Some pain remains not to torment, but to teach stillness. Some things hurt not because they are wrong, but because they reveal where you are not yet free. If the rock will not move, can you stop trying and rest beside it? Night begins to press gently on the trees. The shadows stretch, and a soft, golden glow rises from the lantern the monk carries. You follow him into the meditation hall, where a single candle flickers at the center. He nods for you to sit. Beside the candle, a second one stands untouched, unused. He lights it with the first, and they both burn. Everything that burns, he says, must end. The flame is not hurried. It is not afraid. It knows what it is here for. In Zen, there is a story of a master who would light a new candle each morning, knowing it would be gone by nightfall. When a student asked why he didn't use something more lasting, he replied, "Because I do not need forever to see clearly." You watch the candle burn. It leans slightly. The wax begins to pool at its base. There is a reason for the flame. It is not wasteful to shine, even if the shine is short. The monk continues. We often ask why things end. But perhaps the better question is, did we allow them to burn while they were here? You think of the people who have passed through your life, the moments you wanted to keep forever, the ones that faded, the ones that disappeared before you were ready. What if they were never meant to stay? What if they were meant to light something and then go? The room is quiet now, but not empty. The candle burns on, and you begin to see that endings are not the opposite of meaning. They are part of it. If something must end, will you let it shine while it's here? The next morning arrives with soft mist hanging low over the hills. You and the monk walk a different path now, one that feels unfamiliar, winding through rocks and tangled grass. After a while, you pause. "This doesn't look like the right way," you say. The monk smiles. "It isn't." You stare at him. "But we're not lost," he continues. "We're just off the planned route." You follow him in silence. And slowly, something shifts inside you. You begin to notice what you would have missed, otherwise a small bird's nest nestled in a hollow tree, a patch of blue mushrooms glowing faintly in the damp. You would never have seen them if you had stayed on the path you thought was correct. He turns to you and says, "There's no such thing as a detour. There's only the way." You remember the story of a traveler who missed his boat, only to find while waiting for the next one the person who would change his life. You were never off course. You were just being guided elsewhere. Sometimes the wrong turn is the one that reveals the most. Sometimes getting lost is the only way to truly arrive. If this isn't the path you planned, could it still be the one you need? You reach a clearing where a group of novices are gathering water from a spring. Their laughter is soft, respectful, like wind dancing across still water. One carries a cracked pot. It leaks slightly, a trail of drops marking his return trip. Another novice teases him. Why not ask for a new one? He shrugs, smiling. Because the flowers along the path bloom from this. You follow the water trail and see it a line of small, vibrant blossoms growing only where the drops fall. The monk turns to you. There's a reason for the cracks. You begin to see your own, the faults, the soft places, the ways you have leaked through life. But maybe that leaking fed something. Maybe it made beauty behind you you never knew to look for. In the temple, they say, "The perfect vessel holds water. The cracked one makes the world bloom. If nothing in you ever broke, would you have learned to soften?" Later, under a cypress tree, the monk places a bowl of rice before you. You are hungry. You reach for it quickly. He raises his hand gently. Before you eat, he says, "Bless not the food, but the hunger." You stop. He explains, hunger has brought you here. It reminds you of your aliveness. It is not a flaw. It is a signal, a companion. You look into the bowl. The rice is warm, fragrant. Not a feast, but enough. You take the first bite slowly. In that moment, you are not trying to fill the hunger. You are simply honoring it. There's a saying, "Do not curse the empty bowl." It teaches you what it means to be full. You chew slowly, and you realize there's a reason for longing, for desire, even for emptiness. They are not weaknesses. They are invitations. If hunger led you here, what else in you might be a doorway, not a flaw? Evening again. The sky turns gold, then blush, then blue. You sit by a lantern, watching its flame sway slightly in the dusk breeze. The monk sits nearby, not speaking, only tending the fire. After a while, he says, "Do you know why we light the same lantern every night?" You shake your head. Because even the sun, mighty as it is, disappears, but light returns, again and again. You think of how many times you've lost your way, fallen into shadows, forgotten your own strength. But here, with one small flame, the dark softens. Maybe you don't need to be brilliant all the time. Maybe a single lantern is enough. The monk adds, "The light never judges you for needing it." You close your eyes, and for the first time in a long while, you stop trying to be the sun. You just let yourself be lit. If a single flame can light your way, why demand daylight to feel whole? You are sweeping the walkway when a novice stops you. "Why do we sweep every day, even when the path looks clean?" he asks. Before you can respond, the monk approaches and answers for you both, because dust returns. Not because we failed, but because we live. You look down. Even now the wind brings more leaves, and suddenly you understand. Spiritual practice is not about perfection. It's about presence, maintenance, love. Like brushing your teeth, like feeding your child, like forgiving yourself again. There's a teaching: the dust will always return. So sweep with a peaceful heart. And so you do, because there's a reason for the dust. It reminds you the path is not something you reach, it is something you care for. If the dust comes back each day, will you choose to sweep it with kindness? You follow the sound of a flute, soft and imperfect, played by someone alone in the hills. A few notes fall flat, others drift like petals on water. The monk finds you listening. "Do you know why he plays?" he asks. Not to master the song, but to lose himself inside it. The man playing looks at peace, not performing, not improving, just becoming music. You realize effort isn't always about progress. Sometimes it's about presence. Sometimes it's about the sound that fills the space between your thoughts. There's no reward here, no applause, only breath and sound and a little beauty before the day ends. If no one hears your music, will you still play? At dawn, a bell rings. You and the monk walk to the edge of the field and sit in silence. He holds a seed in his hand. "Do you know why the seed waits?" he asks. You don't answer, because even the earth knows growth takes time. You think of how often you've tried to force progress, rushed your healing, demanded clarity before it was ready. But the seed does not rush. It waits for warmth, for water, for stillness. And even buried, it is not lost. There is a reason you have not bloomed yet. It is not failure, it is timing. So wait gently, trust the darkness. Let the soil do its quiet work. If the seed can wait in silence, can you? The wind rises softly across the hills. Prayer flags flap lightly overhead, sending their messages not to people but to the sky. You and the monk stand beneath them, watching them flutter. They don't carry answers, he says, only intentions. Each flag is printed with prayers not to change the world, but to soften the heart of the one who sees them. Sometimes, he continues, things don't happen for you to understand them. They happen for you to open. And perhaps that's reason enough. You look up at the fluttering cloth, tattered, faded, and still moving. There is something beautiful about things that wear with time, but never stop offering. You bow gently to the wind. You let it carry what cannot be spoken. If a prayer needs no reply, will you still offer yours? The sky softens into early morning gray as the two of you return from the field. Dew sparkles on the grass like tiny offerings left behind by the night. The world feels freshly made even though nothing has changed. The monk walks ahead of you and pauses beside a tree whose trunk has split in two. From its center, new growth pushes upward. This tree, he says, was struck by lightning many years ago. Most thought it would die. You walk closer. Despite its scar, it stands tall, leaves shimmering in the breeze. There's a reason the tree still grows, he continues. It did not resist the split. It let itself open. You run your hand along the trunk. The wound is wide but clean. Time has shaped it into something beautiful. There is a Zen story of a painter who only used broken brushes. When asked why, he said, "They understand what it means to change form and still create beauty. What you carry inside the old break the deep ache, it may not disappear, but it can become something else. It can become a doorway. The pain doesn't need to vanish to make room for peace. Sometimes peace grows from within the crack itself. If the tree had not split, would it still have reached toward the sky? You arrive at the main temple during evening chanting. The hall is filled with voices, low, steady, layered like waves. You take a seat in the back, letting the sound carry you. There are no instruments, no melody, just rhythm, just breath turned into sound. The monk leans over and whispers, "The chant is not to reach the Buddha. It is to wake the Buddha inside you." You listen deeper. You do not know the words. Still something inside stirs. There is a teaching. When we chant, we are not calling out. We are calling in. You close your eyes and let the sound fill you. Not to explain anything, not to fix, just to be with, like the wind through the reeds, like the tide pulling at the shore. You don't need to understand. You only need to soften. If the chant doesn't need meaning, can you let sound become your refuge? The chanting ends, and silence returns like a friend. You step outside and sit beneath a lantern hanging from the rafters. Its flame dances gently behind glass. The monk joins you, offering a cup of warm barley tea. He says nothing, and you realize this is the lesson. In Buddhism, they say, the deepest teachings are not given with words, but with presence. A story comes to mind. A master once held up a single flower and said nothing. Only one student smiled. He was said to have understood everything. You sip your tea slowly. It tastes like earth and fire. Nothing special, and yet everything. There is a reason we speak. But there is also a reason for silence. Words can point. Stillness reveals. If nothing more is said tonight, will you still listen? At the back of the monastery, near the edge of the woods, stands a small shed filled with worn tools, rakes, shears, empty buckets. The monk invites you to help him clean. You lift each object gently. Their wood handles are smooth from years of touch. Some are cracked, some stained, but none are thrown away. These tools have seen seasons pass, the monk says. They have worked through storms, through heat, through stillness. He wipes dust from an old trowel. Their use made them worthy, not less. You begin to see it. Usefulness does not require perfection. Wear is not shameful. It is memory. You think of your own body, your heart, the parts that feel worn. Maybe they are not broken. Maybe they are seasoned. If an old tool still shapes beauty, what part of you have you underestimated? The evening bell rings 3 times, deep round tones that seem to echo into your bones. You and the monk stop at the koi pond, where fish circle in silence. They do not rush, the monk says. They move when the water invites. You sit at the edge and watch them. They are not goal-bound. They are not worried. They do not wonder what tomorrow will bring. There's a teaching in their rhythm, a way of moving without forcing, of flowing without grasping. You remember a time you pushed too hard in work, in love, in life, and how nothing held. But now you wonder, what if stillness was the stronger current? The monk says sometimes surrender is not giving up. It is joining the flow. If you stopped swimming against the current, where might life carry you? A novice sweeps the courtyard. His strokes are uneven, his brow furrowed. The monk watches from afar and smiles. He is trying to perfect the pattern. Later he tells you, "We sweep not for perfection. We sweep because the leaves have fallen." You pick up a broom and begin to help. The rhythm is calming. Leaves come again and again. You do not resist them. You simply sweep. There is a teaching in this too, that action without attachment is its own form of freedom. Not doing for outcome, doing for care. If the leaves will fall again. Can you sweep without frustration? Inside the temple, incense drifts upward in lazy spirals. You light a stick and place it into the ash bowl. Its smoke curls toward the ceiling, then disappears. The monk whispers, "The offering is not the stick. It is the act." You nod. So much in life is like this, a gesture unseen, a kindness unremembered. And still, it matters. You think of moments you gave without thanks, loved without reward. Perhaps they weren't wasted. Perhaps they were incense burning, vanishing, blessing the air all the same. If no one sees your offering, will you still let it rise? The rain begins again, light as breath. You and the monk sit beneath the temple eaves, listening. Neither of you speaks. The rain falls on stones, on leaves, on rooftops. There's no urgency in it, no goal, only falling, only being. This is the most honest sound, the monk says. You listen deeper, and for a moment, nothing in you needs to be different. Not your thoughts, not your body, not your past. You are the leaf, you are the stone. You are the rain, arriving exactly where you must. If the rain needs no reason to fall, why must you need one to rest? The clouds break just after dawn. Soft bands of light stretch across the ground, warming the tiles beneath your bare feet. You follow the monk toward the west garden, where nothing is planted and nothing is trimmed. Wildflowers grow where they please. This garden, the monk says, we do not shape. You walk slowly among crooked stems and uneven rows. Bees hum lazily in the sun. Weeds curl beside blossoms. There is no order. Yet nothing is missing. You ask, "Is this still a garden?" The monk smiles. It is not less beautiful for being free. There's a Zen story of a gardener who pruned every branch chasing perfection. But when he stopped, birds returned and color came back. what he called disorder life called home. You sit in the tall grass and let your body relax. You feel the truth of the teaching that control is not always care, and letting go does not mean neglect, if you allowed life to bloom in its own shape. What beauty might appear unplanned? You enter a small room near the kitchen where a single candle is lit. The monk hands you a broom, but before you begin, he says, "Wait." He opens the window. You ask why. He replies, "Dust will always return. Let it pass through." You sweep slowly, letting the breeze carry fine particles back into the sky. The light catches them like sparks. In that moment you feel it. You cannot stop all dust from gathering, nor must you. Some things come to be moved, not removed. A thought, a fear, a moment of doubt. They pass through like dust on sunlight. And you are the one who opens the window. If the dust cannot be controlled, can you simply let it pass? A bell chimes faintly from the other side of the compound. You walk toward it, and the monk says, "This bell was once cracked. Many wanted to replace it." He smiles, but when it rings now, it sings deeper. You stop and listen. The sound is full, round, weathered, resonant. The crack is not visible, but its effect can be heard. There's a story of a singer who lost her voice and sang lower ever after. Listeners said her songs carried more truth than ever before. The monk says you don't need to be unbroken to be heard. You stand beside the bell and close your eyes. What part of you sings more deeply now? Because of the cracks. By the pond, a turtle crawls slowly across the sand. The monk watches in silence, then says, "It has no urgency." Still, it arrives. You sit with the image. The turtle's path is winding, uneven, deliberate, yet never hesitant. There is no rush, the monk continues. Only presence. You think of how often you've rushed toward goals, away from pain through life, and how much you've missed on the way. Stillness is not delay, it is devotion. You feel it in your breath now, how it moves on its own, asking nothing of you. If you never rushed again, would you still get where you're going? In the main hall, you notice an old robe folded neatly in the corner. The monk picks it up and says, "This belonged to someone who left long ago. We keep it not for memory, but for readiness." You touch the fabric. It smells faintly of time, soft, worn, deeply familiar. Sometimes, he says, the thing we let go of returns in a new way. You think of someone you lost, a place, a dream, something once tightly held. Maybe it wasn't gone. Maybe it's simply been changing form. You don't need to chase what left. You only need to welcome what returns in its own time. If nothing is ever truly lost, can you stop searching and start receiving? A sudden rain returns, but this time you don't flinch. You raise your face to the sky and let it wash over you. The monk stands beside you, soaked, calm, radiant. "There's a reason we do not run," he says. You ask why. Because nothing follows us, only falls on us. The rain is not punishment. It is not warning. It is just what it is, falling, cleansing, present. You laugh softly, and something in you loosens. There is joy in surrender. There is peace in not needing to be dry. If the rain must fall, will you let it bless you instead of chase you? You wake early before light, and find the monk already seated in meditation. You join him. No words are exchanged. The dark slowly lifts, not quickly, but gently, like truth, arriving through the fog of thought. Later you whisper, "When does the light begin?" He replies, "When we stop needing it too." The teaching lands. You remember the times you sat in darkness demanding it to leave, not knowing it had something to show you first. Not all darkness is danger. Some is just depth. Some is waiting. Some is the pause before bloom. If the light is already coming, can you rest while it arrives? You visit a shrine where people leave folded prayers. Some are legible, some are blurred by rain, some are blank. You ask the monk about the empty ones. He smiles. Not all prayers need words. You hold a slip of paper. It is light, fragile, silent. Still, it carries something. You remember a time you couldn't speak what you felt, and yet somehow it was still heard by someone. Maybe by the sky, maybe by your own heart. You fold the blank paper slowly. If what you feel has no words, will you trust it still carries weight? The monk takes you to the bamboo grove. The wind blows through the stalks, and they bend, not breaking, not resisting. They do not fight the wind, he says. They move with it. You watch as they sway, then return upright again and again. Bend, rise, bend, rise. That is their wisdom. You think of the times you tried to stand rigid, tried to resist what was already happening. What if resilience isn't hardness but softness that returns? If life pushes again, can you bend and still rise? You sit by the temple gate watching ants carry grains of rice across the stone. One slips, another helps. The monk kneels beside you and says, "They do not compare. They do not compete. They just carry." You watch the trail grow longer. It is not fast, but it is sure. Sometimes he says the reason we suffer is not because life is hard, but because we believe we are alone. You sit a while longer, and the ants become teachers too. If they can carry together, will you let others carry you too? Later that evening, the monk invites you to sit near the old water basin. A steady drip falls from a bamboo pipe above it, one drop at a time, slow, measured, patient. Drip, drip, drip. He gestures toward the basin. This has never been filled all at once. You watch the surface ripple gently, the water rising, not with force but with constancy. There is a reason we return to practice again and again, he says. Each breath, each step, each kind act another drop. One day the bowl is full. You think of your own efforts, the days that felt small, unseen, incomplete. But maybe they were drops. Maybe that's how everything fills, one quiet moment at a time. If one drop can shape stone, what will your patience create? The sky is overcast, but soft. You sit with the monk beneath a wooden awning as wind pushes gently through the garden. He hands you a small wooden flute. "I don't know how to play," you say. He smiles. "That is why you should begin." You bring it to your lips and breathe. No melody, just a low, uneven tone. But something in you loosens. The sound feels honest. There is a teaching in trying, the monk says. Not in mastery, but in willingness. There's an old Zen saying the beginner sings the truest note. You play again not to perform, but to feel. If the attempt is sacred, Why wait until you're ready? A novice approaches, his robe dusty, his brow furrowed. I spill the offering bowl, he confesses. The monk nods and replies, then the earth has received the gift instead. No scolding, no shame, just acceptance. You feel it deeply, how often you have condemned your own mistakes, fearing they ruined what could have been sacred. But maybe they too belong. There's a tale of a monk who knocked over a lamp during evening prayers. The master said, now the shadows have changed. That is enough. You think of your own stumbles. Perhaps they created a new path, one you couldn't have planned. If the spilled offering still feeds the earth, can you trust your mistakes hold meaning? In the temple kitchen, the scent of soup lingers in the air, ginger miso, something warm and familiar. You sit at a long wooden table while a pot simmers. The monk stirs it slowly. Each ingredient was plain, he says, but together they become something nourishing. He adds a pinch of salt, waits. That is the way he continues. No part must shine. The truth is in the whole. You reflect on your life, the plain moments, the quiet ones, the ones you thought didn't matter, but they did. They became you. You sip the soup. It is not perfect, but it comforts. And that too is enough. If every small moment blends together, will you honor the ones you've overlooked? A call to work in the garden is announced by the slow beat of a wooden clapper. You join others pulling weeds, clearing brush. The sun rises higher. Sweat beads on your neck. A young novice sighs, I thought the path was peaceful. The monk replies, it is. Peaceful does not mean easy. The weeds resist. The soil is stubborn. But slowly, row by row, you clear space. It's not elegant. It's not graceful. But it's real. There's a teaching in every handful of earth that truth often requires effort. And peace, like a garden, must be tended. If the path is hard, will you walk it anyway? You walk past a tree that has been split in half, yet both sides lean into each other, supporting growing. They hold each other, the monk says. There's no binding, no repair, just closeness, just shared weight. You think of someone in your life who once held you up or whom you held wordlessly. There's a Zen koan. What holds without gripping? What joins without clinging? You sit beneath the tree. Not everything needs to be fixed. Some things are simply meant to lean. If two broken parts can still stand together. Who have you held, and who has held you? A novice runs past, chasing a paper scroll caught in the wind. He leaps, grabs it, smiles. The monk watches, then turns to you. Do you remember when you last chased joy? You pause. It's been a while. But joy, like the scroll, doesn't always land where we expect. Sometimes it runs, dances, escapes routine. There's a lesson in the chase, not in catching, but in allowing yourself to move toward what makes you light. You begin to smile, and that smile too is a teaching. If joy runs ahead, will you let yourself follow? In the study hall, you find a scroll left unfinished, only half a verse, no signature. The monk looks at it and says, not all teachings are complete. He sits with you and adds one final stroke, not to finish it, but to honor it. There's beauty in what is left open. In Buddhism, they say, the incomplete teaching is the one still living. You look at your own story, the chapter unfinished, the line that trails off. Maybe it doesn't need closure. Maybe it only needs presence. If something ends before it's complete, Can you still bow to it? You return to the place where you first arrived, the gate. The gravel path. The open silence. But now you feel different. The path hasn't changed. You have. The monk stands beside you and says, "The truth was never outside. It has always been the way you see." You breathe deeply, the same air, a different peace. There's an old saying, after the journey the traveler is still the same and never the same. You look out beyond the gate. You do not need to go anywhere. You are already home. If the path has brought you back, will you see it with new eyes? The day ends softly. Lanterns flicker. The sky turns lavender. You sit alone now, not out of loneliness, but reflection. You recall the moments, the drops of water, the cracked cup, the silent chant, the fallen leaf. Each one a thread, each one a reason. Not a reason written in stone, but one whispered gently into your heart. You lie down on the tatami mat. The monk does not return. He doesn't need to. The teaching has already been passed. It now lives in your breath, in your steps, in your stillness. And you sleep not because everything makes sense, but because finally it does not have to. Morning light slips through the paper walls like quiet understanding. You wake slowly, not startled, not hurried, as if your body already knew this was a sacred day, though nothing is planned. You sit up. The tatami is cool beneath your hands. There's no sound but bird song and the distant rustling of robes. A folded note waits near your cushion. 3 words written by the monk. Nothing was wasted. You hold the paper for a long time. There's a story in the temple of a monk who burned his own calligraphy one winter when the firewood ran out. The others mourned the loss, but the master said, "Better warmth in the body than praise on the shelf." Even what seems gone can still serve. Even what you thought was failure may have kept you alive. Your regrets are not wasted. Your delays are not wasted. Even your forgetting may have helped you remember what truly matters. You place the note beside your heart. If nothing was wasted, can you stop grieving what you think should have gone differently? You walk past a mirror in the hallway, simple, unframed, slightly warped at the edges. For a moment you pause and see your reflection. Not just your face, but your softness, your weariness, your becoming. The monk appears behind you and says, "You've changed." You ask, "Have I improved?" He shakes his head. "You've returned." In Buddhism, they say the path is not about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you were before fear, before striving, before the noise. The mirror doesn't flatter or distort. It just reflects, as you are, as you've always been. No judgment, no praise, just truth. If the reflection is enough, can you meet it without needing to fix it? You enter the incense room again, where morning offerings have already begun. A novice places a single stick, bows and leaves. The smoke rises without instruction. The monk stands beside you. "This is how the teachings continue," he says. "Not through command, but through devotion." No one told the novice to be here. No one needed to. There's a saying, when the heart is touched, it remembers its way. You light your own stick. You bow. You do not need to know all the sutras. You only need sincerity. The sacred does not require perfection. It only asks for presence. If devotion does not need direction, will you follow what draws your heart? In the kitchen, a kettle whistles softly. The monk lifts it, pours hot water over dried herbs, and hands you a cup. It smells of ginger and lemon balm. You sip. Warmth spreads through your body. This is the medicine, he says. Not the tea, but the attention. You pause, and you understand. The way he poured it, the way you received it, the silence between sips, that is what heals. There's a tale of a healer who stopped prescribing remedies and began offering presents instead. His patients still got well. Sometimes it's not what we take in, but how we hold it. If presence can be the cure, can you offer it to yourself? Rain returns heavier this time. You sit beneath the awning watching it fall in sheets across the grass. A novice sighs beside you. It was supposed to be clear today. The monk replies gently, and yet it rains. No complaint, no solution, just rain. This too is a teaching. Control is comforting, but surrender is true peace. You cannot make the sky obey, but you can choose how you sit beneath it. The raindrops tap the roof like soft reminders. Life doesn't follow plans. It follows patterns. And all patterns change. If today is not what you expected, can you still let it nourish you? You pass a quiet alcove where a row of sandals sits, some neatly placed, some crooked. The monk kneels and straightens each pair. You ask, is it necessary? He answers, not for them, for me. There's a lesson here, quiet and small, that care is not always about the result. Sometimes we tend to the world not to change it, but to keep our hearts in rhythm. There's a phrase, order outside, stillness inside. Straightening sandals, sweeping dust, offering tea. They are not tasks. They are devotions. If small acts center you, can you honor the simple rituals of your day? A breeze moves through the hall, flipping pages of a handwritten sutra left open on the altar. You move to close it. The monk stops you. Let the wind read, he says. You pause, watching the pages shift. Sometimes the teachings don't come from teachers. Sometimes nature reminds us what to hear. The wind knows no language, yet it turns the sacred text as gently as any hand. You watch, you listen, and something unspoken settles in your chest. Not everything must be understood to be received. If the wind carries wisdom, will you stop waiting for words? In the evening, you help the cook chop vegetables. Carrots, radish, cabbage. Each slice is clean, steady, mindful. The monk watches you. Are you thinking? He asks. You pause. Not really. He smiles. Then you are practicing. Zen is often called the art of everyday attention. Peeling garlic, sweeping steps, folding cloth. No mantra needed. No perfect pose. Just presence, just breath. You finish the chopping and feel more clear than after any long meditation, because this too is the path. If simplicity brings you back to yourself, why complicate the way the candlelight flickers on the altar? You stare into its flame unmoving. The monk walks behind you and says that flame is your mind. Bright, soft, always moving. You watch it, how it dances, then stills, then dances again. The monk adds, we do not ask the flame to freeze. We just let it burn without fear. You've tried so hard to still your thoughts, to be calm, to be blank. But maybe your mind was never meant to go silent. Maybe it was meant to be seen. Witnessed, allowed. If the flame can flicker without fault, Can your thoughts do the same? You pass by the garden just after a rainfall. The petals of the lotus blossoms are heavy with drops bent low. The monk kneels and touches one gently. They bow not from weakness, he says, but from blessing. You look closer, water clings to every edge, and yet the flower does not break. It yields, it receives, it glows. There's a teaching in this, that the things that weigh us down may also be what deepens our beauty. Grief, love, change, they soften the petals. They strengthen the stem. If the lotus bows under the weight of water, can you bow too without breaking? The day has grown warm. You sit beside a wide stone basin filled with water. On its surface floats a single plum blossom, pale and small, spinning slightly with each breeze. The monk joins you. He doesn't speak. You watch the flower turn, drift, return, always gentle, never hurried. There is a reason for the drift, he says finally. It teaches us how to move without struggle. You've spent years trying to steer everything. Life-timing emotion outcome. But this blossom, it floats not because it gave up, but because it trusts the water beneath it. You begin to understand surrender is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is grace. If the water is already carrying you, why keep paddling against its rhythm? You find an old brush beside a scroll half-painted, a branch, half-formed a bird with no face. Why wasn't it finished, you ask? The monk looks at it and replies, because what was already said was enough. You stare at the painting. Though incomplete, it stirs something whole inside you. We're taught to finish everything, to complete, to conclude, to perfect. But maybe some things are meant to be left open. Maybe the silence, the pause, the breath left unspoken, they carry their own fullness. If the story ends in the middle, can you still find peace in what's already here? You walk past the bell again. This time the monk invites you to strike it. You hesitate. He nods, with care. You lift the mallet and tap gently. The sound expands low, full-reaching, far beyond the walls. The monk closes his eyes. Let it ring through you. You listen until the vibration fades completely. In Zen, they say a single sound heard fully is enlightenment. It doesn't need to last. It only needs to be received. You realize the bell never holds back. It gives everything in one tone, then rests. If you let yourself resonate fully, will you allow yourself to rest after? By the old fig tree, you notice a spider web stretched between two branches glistening in the sunlight, fragile and perfect. A small tear runs across one edge. The monk crouches beside you. It was mended, he says. You look closer. A second thread, thinner than the rest, spans the gap. The web still holds. You think of your own tears, not the ones from your eyes, but the ones in your life. The places where something broke, and yet you're still here, still catching light, still holding. If the spider can weave again, will you trust your healing is already happening? The afternoon brings heat. You walk to the edge of a stream with the monk. He sits, rolls up his sleeves, and places his feet in the water. He gestures for you to do the same. The cold is sharp at first, but quickly settles into comfort. Let it carry your thinking, he says. You close your eyes and feel the water pull gently across your skin. Thoughts rise, fall, drift away. In Zen, water is a great teacher. It moves around obstacles. It adapts, it cools, it carves stone with time, not force. You let go, you breathe, and for a while there is nothing but flow. If water does not hold what passes, why should you? Inside the main hall, a small gong rests on the altar. The monk places a cushion before it and says, "Sit." Wait for no sound. You do. Minutes pass. Stillness deepens. You begin to notice the space around everything, the breath between thoughts, the silence between sounds, the pause between words. Eventually, the monk whispers, "Not all gongs need to ring to be heard." You feel it now. The teaching is in the space, not the strike. Stillness is not absence. It is presence made whole. If the teaching hides in silence, can you hear it without needing a sound? In the calligraphy room, a single word hangs framed on the wall. Enough. You stare at it for a long time. The monk enters and says, "It was the last word my teacher ever wrote." You ask, "Was it a message for someone?" "For himself," the monk replies. "And maybe for all of us." You let the words settle inside you. Enough. Not more, not less. Not better. Not perfect. Just this breath, this heart, this moment. Complete. You bow to the ink, to the paper, to the teacher who stopped writing when the truth was full. If this moment is enough, will you stop searching for more? The monk leads you to a stone wall surrounding the back of the temple. Vines have begun to grow through the cracks. Nothing stays untouched, he says. You run your fingers along the moss-covered stone. Time has worn it down, but not destroyed it. There's a lesson in this wall, that strength is not resisting change, but allowing it to move through you without breaking. The vines are not invaders. They are part of the story now. If life grows through your cracks, will you let it soften you, not shatter you? A novice hands you a cup of tea, but it spills slightly on the way to your lips. You frown. The monk watches and says, "Don't reach so quickly. The cup will wait." You pause. You breathe. Then you lift the cup with both hands, slowly, fully present. The tea tastes sweeter now. In life, how often have you rushed to the next moment, as if peace were just ahead instead of already here? You smile into the steam. If the cup can wait for your stillness, can you stop rushing toward what's already in your hands? Just before nightfall, you return to the place where you first asked your question, why? You sit on the same bench. The sky above is now filled with color, peach, gold, violet. It burns quietly. The monk appears beside you, no words, just breath. And this time you don't ask, because you know, not in thoughts, but in silence, in the way the wind moves through the grass, in the sound of your own heart beating softer now. The answer was never far. It was always here, unfolding in the quiet moments you were learning how to listen. If the question was the beginning, is your silence now the answer? Night settles like a soft shawl across the shoulders of the temple. You walk past the rows of slippers lined up outside the meditation hall, each one different, each one pointing inward. You pause, then take off your own, bare feet on cool stone. The monk is already inside, seated in stillness. You join him, breath sinking slowly with the quiet around you. He does not open his eyes. Instead, he says, "When you remove your shoes, you are not just entering this room. You are stepping out of yourself. You feel it, the release, the loosening of the identity that clings to roles, names, mistakes. You become only breath, only being. There's a teaching in Zen: before enlightenment, carry water, chop wood. After enlightenment, carry water, chop wood barefoot. You do not need to become more. You only need to become less burdened. If removing your shoes can bring you closer to truth, what else are you ready to take off? You walk through the corridor where bells are stored, each one a different size, shape, voice. The monk stops before one that hasn't been rung in years. It still holds sound, he says. It is not forgotten. He gently taps the side. A faint vibration hums out, soft and distant. You ask, why don't we use it more? He replies, because some things aren't meant to ring often, only when truly needed. You think of parts of yourself that have gone quiet, dreams, feelings, joys buried beneath years, and yet they still hold sound, still hold life, waiting if something in you has gone quiet. Can you believe it's not gone, just waiting to be touched? Near the north wall, you see a pile of broken clay pots. You assume it's waste, but the monk walks over and lifts one gently. This one held seeds for 10 seasons. He picks up another. This one was used during a drought and never cracked. He places them back. They are not trash, he says. They are stories. You sit beside them. You begin to think of the things you've discarded, parts of yourself you labeled useless, outdated too, worn to hold beauty. But perhaps they carried you through something, and that is reason enough to bow to them. If even broken pots are remembered, can you stop throwing away the parts of you that survived? The moon rises over the eastern ridge, full and golden, casting long shadows across the courtyard. You and the monk sit in its light faces, bathed in soft silver. He says the moon does not shine. It reflects. You take in the glow, the stillness, the effortless beauty. You do not need to be the source, he continues, only open enough to receive. You realize peace isn't something you make, it's something you mirror. Like the moon, you reflect what you allow to touch you. Kindness, stillness, love. If you stop trying to shine, will you finally begin to glow? You wake in the middle of the night, restless. Outside, the wind rustles through the pines, and the monk is already walking the path with a lantern. He nods, gestures for you to join. No sleep, he asks. You shake your head, then walk. Gently. Let the night hold your thoughts. So you walk, not to fix, not to solve, just to move with the dark. There's a practice in this temple called night walking, the slow steps of a mind, learning not to resist its wakefulness. Some awakenings don't happen in daylight. Some truths are only heard when the world is asleep. If you're restless tonight, will you walk with it instead of against it? At the far edge of the grounds, the monk shows you a stone that's been split by a tree root. Not shattered, just opened slowly over years. This is how patience moves, he says. You crouch beside it. The tree didn't force the stone. It didn't rush. It just grew quietly, and the stone eventually made space. You think of the places in your life where things feel immovable, unchangeable. Maybe you don't need to push. Maybe you only need to keep growing, and the stone will shift on its own. If time can open stone, can you trust your quiet effort? You sit with a bowl of rice steam rising in the cool morning air. A novice drops a few grains, then quickly gathers them. The monk watches and says, "Each grain is a life. Do not rush past them. You take your time. You chew slowly. You feel the warmth spread into your chest." In Zen, eating is not just nourishment, it's awareness. Each bite a blessing. Each swallow a prayer. You remember the times you ate in distraction, thinking of the next task, the next thing. But here now, this one bowl is enough. If one meal can be sacred, will you stop rushing through what's already nourishing you? A lantern flickers in the wind. The flame leans, stretches, almost goes out, but finds its center again. You and the monk watch it dance. He says, "This is your mind." You nod. He adds, "And also your spirit." Then and also your breath. You laugh softly. "It's everything." He nods once, and still nothing. In Zen, they say the flame burns with no self. It does not try. It simply responds to wind, to stillness, to fuel. You sit longer watching it sway, not trying to hold it steady, just letting it be. If the flame is free to move, can your spirit be too? The monk hands you a small book with blank pages. "This is your sutra," he says. You open it. Nothing is written. No guidance, no rules. Just space. This, he says, is for what you live, not what you memorize. You hold the book carefully. Each page will carry something, a kindness, a mistake, a silence you honored. The sutra of your life is not spoken aloud. It is breathed. It is walked. And every day, another line is written. If your story is the scripture, what will you inscribe with today's presence? A novice asks, "When do I know I'm ready?" The monk responds, "When you stop needing to ask." You sit nearby hearing the exchange. You feel it in your own chest, the yearning to be prepared, to be complete, to be certain. But maybe readiness isn't a moment. It's a surrender. It's the willingness to begin even when you don't feel ready. The monk says softly, "The gate opens when the step is taken, not before." You breathe, and something within you shifts. If the path opens only when you walk, will you trust your feet to find it? You and the monk sweep the meditation hall. Dust rises, settles again, rises once more. You pause, wiping your forehead. The monk says, "We never finish sweeping, but we keep sweeping." It isn't about reaching a spotless floor. It's about being present in the act itself. In Zen, they say, "Sweep the ground to sweep the mind." You notice your thoughts are quieter now, not because they are gone, but because you are here, fully, just this broom, this motion, this moment. If peace comes not from completion, but from attention, will you find it in repetition? The temple bell rings low and long. The monk says, "One breath in, one bell out." You follow his instruction, inhale, then let the sound carry your exhale. Breath and bell move together. You realize you've been breathing all your life, but rarely noticing. Now breath becomes sacred, not because it is rare, but because you are paying attention. You don't need to change anything. You just need to return. If the bell brings you back to breath, what might your own stillness bring you back to you? Help hang prayer flags on a rope above the temple gate. The wind stirs them gently as you tie the last knot. They fray over time, the monk says, but their blessings remain. You look at the faded flags, worn thin colors bleeding into each other, still fluttering. still praying. Age has not erased their meaning. It has revealed it. You think of your own frayed edges, and perhaps you too are still offering something beautiful. If your beauty doesn't come from being new, will you allow it to come from being true? The monk invites you to carry water in a bucket up the hill. You agree, but halfway there the bucket begins to leak. You panic. You rush. At the top there's only a little left. The monk looks at it and smiles. Now look behind you. You turn and see a line of blooming flowers along the path. It watered as it went, he says. Not despite the crack, but because of it. You feel your throat tighten. You've been so focused on how little you seem to carry. You forgot to look at what has bloomed behind you. If you've been leaking light this whole time, was that not the point? A novice sits in tears by the river. You sit beside him, and the monk joins silently. Finally, the novice asks, "Why do I feel so much?" The monk answers, "Because your heart is not asleep. There's no shame in feeling. The wind touches only open windows. Let your tears water the seeds of compassion. You do not need to fix this. You only need to feel it and keep walking. If your tenderness is not weakness, will you let it guide you gently?" The monk brings you to the graveyard behind the temple. Simple stone markers, no names, just presence. He kneels and bows. "These are not endings," he says. "They are echoes." You listen to the wind, to the silence, to the space left behind. Even in absence there is teaching. Even in stillness there is sound. You walk between the stones, slowly, each one a whisper of a life that once bowed like you are now. If nothing truly disappears, what part of you is still speaking in silence? In the main hall, a candle burns low. The monk places another beside it. You ask, why not wait until it's finished? He says, because we do not wait for darkness to prepare for light. You feel the message land quietly inside. Preparation is not worry. It is care. It is honoring the cycles, not fearing them. If you know something will fade, will you meet it with grace? You and the monk fold robes in the laundry room, soft, worn cloth still smelling of cedar and sun. Fold with gratitude, he says, not just for the robe, but for the body it holds. You pause, touching the fabric. You've spent so long critiquing your body, and yet it has carried you through sorrow, joy, and sleep. Through all of it, what if you thanked it? If your body has served you despite your harshness, can you finally show it kindness? You step into the kitchen and see an elder monk washing a bowl with deep concentration. Each motion is deliberate, gentle, complete. You watch transfixed. Later you ask, why such care for one bowl? He answers, because I hold the world in it. In Buddhism, there is no mundane, only mindless or mindful. You look at your own hands, at what they've rushed through, what they've overlooked. Then you reach for a bowl and begin again. If the world fits in a bowl, will you carry it more carefully? Night returns. You sit outside watching a moth flutter near the lantern. It doesn't flee the light. It circles, touches, returns. The monk says that's how the mind moves in meditation. Don't swat it. Don't chase it. Let it circle. Your thoughts come and go. Desire, regret, memory, each one flutters, then fades. You do not need to control them. You only need to witness. If your thoughts are just moths, can you stop fearing their flight? You walk beneath the moon with a novice who is struggling. He says, I don't know what I believe anymore. You don't answer. You both walk in silence. Later, the monk joins and says belief is like the moon's reflection. It changes shape, but it's still the same light. Doubt is not failure. It is movement. It is humility. You look up. The moon is still shining, whether full or thin. If belief fades, can you stay until it returns? You find a small statue of Kuan Yin tucked into the garden wall, the bodhisattva of compassion. Her face is serene. One hand open, one hand lowered. She hears the cries of the world, the monk says, but she never rushes. You ask why. He says, because listening is the first act of healing. You kneel, you touch the earth, and you listen to the wind, the birds, to your own quiet heart. If compassion begins with listening, can you offer that to yourself too? A group of children visits the temple. They run, laugh, shout. You tense. The monk smiles. Let the Dharma play. You ask, isn't this sacred space? He replies, so is their joy. You watch them free, wild, unburdened, and you remember a version of yourself that once danced without fear. What happened to that one? Where did you last see them? If joy is a Dharma gate, will you let yourself walk through it laughing? You find a tattered scroll tucked behind a shelf. Its ink has faded. Parts are missing. The monk reads what remains aloud. What is remembered is enough. You ask, enough for what? He closes the scroll and says, for now, not everything will be saved. Not everything must be. The teaching is not in preservation. It is in presence. If you remember only part of the teaching, can you still live all of it? You stumble on a loose stone and fall. Your knee aches. The monk hurries to your side but does not panic. He helps you up, cleans the scrape. Then he says falling is not failure. It is return to the ground. You sit, breath shaking but intact. You've fallen before in love, in trust, in plans. But you rose again, and maybe that rising is the sacred part. If you fall, can you rise softer? A novice spills tea during the morning offering. He gasps, freezes. The monk bows and says, you have made the floor holy. You don't understand at first, but then you see it wasn't the mistake, it was how he received it. With dignity, with grace. You think of your own spills. Maybe they weren't accidents. Maybe they were consecrations. If even the mess can be a blessing, can you stop hiding your humanity? You walk through fog one morning. The path is invisible. You can only see a few steps ahead. The monk says, that's all you need. You want to argue to see farther, plan better. But you keep walking. Step, step, still standing, still moving. There's a lesson here. Faith is not about seeing the end. It's about walking anyway. If the fog doesn't lift, will you keep going anyway? You return to the bell tower alone. You sit, you breathe, you listen, and for the first time, you don't wait for teaching. You let yourself just be. Later, the monk finds you there and says, now the temple is truly in you. No instruction, no ritual, just breath, just stillness. You've crossed over from learning to living. If the temple now lives within you, what do you no longer need to seek? Rain begins again. Soft, persistent. You lay your palms open to the sky. The monk smiles. Now you're practicing, he says. You don't need to know what comes next. You don't need to name the reason. You just need to be here. Open, present, receiving, like the leaf, like the earth, like the monk beside you. If the sky is giving, can you let go enough to receive it is night? You walk the path alone, no sound but your breath, and still, you are not afraid. Because now you know this too is the teaching, the dark, the quiet, the space between footsteps. All of it belongs, all of it points home. You don't need another answer. You don't need another guide. You are walking with peace, and that is enough. If everything is the path, are you ready to rest? You rise early before the bells, before the birds, before even the sky remembers its color. The air is still cool and the ground slightly damp beneath your feet. You walk to the edge of the garden and sit where the soil has been turned for planting. The monk arrives carrying a single seed. He kneels beside you, presses it gently into the earth, and covers it. No words, no ceremony, just trust. He looks up and says, "The seed does not ask when it will bloom. It just waits in the dark." You feel those words in your chest. How often have you pushed your own process, demanded insight before it was ready, expected blossoms without honoring the stillness beneath? Here the seed teaches something softer, patience without pressure, becoming without force, silence with purpose. If you too are in the dark, can you trust you are only beginning? Inside the archive room, you find an old wooden box filled with folded letters. None are signed. Each one is addressed to no one and everyone. The monk watches as you unfold a paper that reads, "I didn't understand then, but now I bow." You read more. Letters from past students, visitors, wanderers. Each one a moment of clarity written for no reader, yet received now by you. They wrote not to be read, the monk says, but to release. You feel something stir inside. Maybe your own heart has a letter waiting to be written, one you never sent, one you didn't know how to say. If the page can hold what the voice cannot, will you let yourself write what can't be spoken? You return to the stone bench near the gate where your journey first began. The same gravel, the same wind in the trees, but everything feels new. Not because the world has changed, because now you are listening, really listening, to the silence beneath things, to the breath inside them, to the reason that never needed explanation. The monk sits beside you one last time. You've walked far, he says, and still you've never left. You look around. It's true. Everything that has happened brought you back here more awake, more present, more soft. And perhaps this is the reason behind all reasons. To return to yourself, to come home, to rest. If this is the end, can you receive it like a beginning? You walk past the prayer wheels near the east gate. Each one spins slowly, effortlessly, with the lightest touch. The monk places his palm on one and sets it in motion. It turns, then slows, then stops. No force, he says. Only release. You try, and the wheel turns beneath your hand like a soft exhale. The prayer is not in the spin, it is in the letting go. You feel it in your chest, the need to push, to prove, beginning to soften. There's a teaching here that surrender isn't giving up, it's giving over. If peace turns on a light touch, why keep gripping so tightly? In the forest clearing, a fallen log lies across the trail. The monk does not step over it. He sits. You join him back against the bark, the forest alive with insects, birdsong, wind. This is a resting place, he says. Because the way was blocked. You think of the times life forced you to pause. The injuries, the endings, the closed doors. You thought they were detours, but maybe they were invitations to sit, to breathe, to see if the path stops here for a while. Can you let it be enough? A butterfly lands on your hand as you stand near the garden wall. It stays for only a second, then flutters away. The monk watches from a distance. Nothing held too tightly stays. You look at your hand still open free. He walks over. That's why we bow with empty palms. You remember the times you grasped too hard. Love, ambition, answers, and how they slipped through anyway. But when you let go, they sometimes returned or became something better. If you release what you fear to lose, might it find its way back more gently? You're tasked with preparing rice today. The process is slow rinse, soak, wait, steam, serve. You ask, isn't there a faster way? The monk smiles. Yes, but not a deeper one. You realize the care is part of the nourishment. So much of what feeds us takes time. In a world of instant answers, perhaps slowness is sacred. Each grain like a tiny bell of presence. Each motion a prayer. You slow down, you breathe, and the rice is not just food. It's meditation. If slowness heals you, can you stop rushing your own becoming? The monk invites you to sweep the roof. You climb the ladder uncertain. Up there, the sky feels vast, the wind stronger, your breath louder, and the dust almost invisible until light touches it. That's when you see it, the things you never noticed now made visible from above. This is why we change perspective, the monk calls up. To remember what's always been there. You sweep slowly, and you begin to feel lighter. Not because the dust is gone, but because you're finally seeing it. If clarity comes from a different view, will you let yourself climb at the edge of the pond? Frogs sing into the dusk. Their voices overlap, not melodic, but full, wild, alive. The monk sits with you and listens. None of them wait for silence, he says. They just sing. You close your eyes and breathe with the chorus. Not polished, not perfect, but whole. You remember your own voice, how long it's been since you used it without apology. What would it mean to speak, even if it isn't pretty? Even if no one applauds, if your voice is already enough? Why are you still waiting for permission? You help repair the old fence around the orchard. The wood is split in places, rotted in others. Some boards are missing. You begin to replace them, but the monk stops you. No, he says, we mend, we don't replace. You ask why. Because memory holds here, and beauty doesn't require symmetry. You look at the uneven fence, patched and imperfect, and you begin to see its honesty, its resilience, its story. If your healing leaves marks, can you see them as part of your wholeness? The wind scatters dry leaves across the temple steps. You sweep, they return. You sweep again, a novice groans. Why bother? The monk smiles. Because practice is not about success, it's about devotion. You continue sweeping, not to win, not to finish, but to return and return again, like breath, like sunrise, like the tide. If nothing stays clean, will you still show up with care? The monk places a pebble in your palm. It's been shaped by river and time, he says. You turn it over, smooth, cool, unmarked. He adds, it never rushed its becoming. You close your hand around it. Your story too is slow, invisible from the outside, but shaping you nonetheless. If time is still shaping you, can you be patient with your edges? You sit at the far edge of the temple alone. The wind is strong. Trees sway. Clouds churn. Inside you, something feels unsettled. The monk joins you quietly and says, even wind has purpose. You ask, what does it carry? He smiles. Exactly what needs to move. You breathe into the gust, and slowly your resistance loosens. If life stirs you, can you trust it is asking something to shift? In the kitchen, a pot boils over. Steam rises hissing. You rush to fix it. The monk stops you. First he says, turn down the flame. You realize we often try to fix what's spilling without tending the heat beneath it. He lowers the fire. The pot calms. So do you. If your emotions boil, can you tend to the fire, not just the mess? A novice forgets the chant. He stumbles, pauses, blushes. The monk smiles and begins again. So does everyone else. No one is scolded. No one is left behind. The chant becomes even softer, even truer. This you think is compassion. It doesn't correct. It accompanies. If someone stumbles near you, will you return to the chant beside them? You walk alone through the garden and feel a sudden sadness, sharp, unnamed, ancient. You stop, sit, breathe. The monk appears and places his hand lightly on your shoulder. You are not broken, he says. You are blooming in a difficult season. That's all. But it's enough. If sadness is a season, will you stop calling it failure? You watch an old woman sweep the temple steps in slow, graceful arcs. You ask, why so slow? She replies, because I want the dust to feel loved. You laugh softly, but something in you understands. Kindness doesn't just belong to people. It belongs to how we touch everything, even dust, even what we want to remove. If you can be gentle with dust, can you be gentle with your own mess? The sky darkens. Rain begins again. You gather your robe about to run, but the monk walks slowly into the downpour, arms open. You stop. You step out with him. You let the rain soak you. You let the moment hold you, and for once, you don't escape the wetness. You receive it. If the rain is not interruption, can it become blessing? A candle sputters as the wind sneaks through a crack in the window. The monk cups his hand around the flame. It settles. He says, we don't stop the wind. We protect the light. You feel that how often you've tried to push life away instead of guarding the part in you that still glows. The world may stir. The wind may come, but inside you something burns steadily. If you cannot change the wind, can you shelter what matters? You return to the tree with the split trunk. Today a bird sings from within its hollow. The monk stands beside you and says, even broken trees become homes. You smile. What once looked like loss now feels like shelter. You think of the parts of yourself you've mourned and realize some of them made you more hospitable to love, to wisdom, to softness. If your cracks let life in, will you still call them wounds? The monk hands you a mirror with dust on its surface. He asks, what do you see? You wipe it clean, then see yourself not clearer, just softer. Reflection requires nothing more than removal, he says, not addition. You wonder how much effort you've spent trying to become something, when maybe The work is to unbecome, to remove what isn't truly you. So what remains when you stop performing? If the mirror shines only when cleared, can you stop adding and start seeing you help a novice carry a heavy pail of water? Halfway to the garden, he slips and water spills across your feet. He gasps, apologizes. The monk laughs gently and says, "Now your feet are washed." You feel it too, the absurd grace in the accident. Not every spill is loss. Sometimes it's cleansing. Sometimes it's kindness disguised as mistake. If your burden spills unexpectedly, can you welcome the unexpected blessing? You fold robes with the elder nun. Her hands move slowly, precisely, with reverence. You ask, "How long have you done this?" She answers, 53 winters. You ask, "Does it ever get old?" She smiles. It gets holy. You pause and fold your own robe as if it were the first and only one you'll ever fold. Some things, when done with love, become sacred over time. If repetition feels dull, can you add presence until it becomes prayer? The monk takes you to a windowless room lit only by a small oil lamp. He says, "This is how most of us live, with just enough light to see what's nearby." You nod. He continues, and still, we move forward. Not everything is illuminated. Not everything is known. And still we keep walking. Perhaps not seeing everything is a kind of trust. If the light is only partial, will you walk anyway? You find a child at the temple gate sobbing quietly. No one speaks her language. The monk kneels, places a hand on her back. No words, just presence. Eventually she breathes slower, then stops crying and stays. You ask, "How did you help?" He says, "I didn't. I just didn't leave." You learn comfort is often wordless. It is not fixing. It is staying. If you can't explain the answer, can you still be someone's safe place? The path is muddy today. Your steps are slow, unsure. The monk doesn't avoid the puddles. He steps into them, then looks back. Now others will see the way. You hadn't thought of that. That your messy journey could leave prints that help others find their footing. You keep walking, not carefully, but clearly. If your muddy steps guide someone else, will you stop trying to walk so clean? The temple bell rings for the final time today. You sit beneath the sound, letting it pass through your ribs like wind through leaves. You ask the monk, "Why does the bell move me more at night?" He says, "Because there's less noise around it." Maybe peace was never absent. Maybe it was just covered, and now in the quiet you hear it again. If night brings the teaching, will you stop fearing the dark? A novice drops a cup. It shatters. He's frozen in shame. You walk over and kneel, picking up the largest piece. The monk joins you both. He says, "Now we begin again with different shapes." Later the cup is mended with gold, and it's more beautiful than before. There's a Japanese teaching, kintsugi, the art of visible repair. You don't have to hide your scars. They may be where your strength glows through. If something breaks, can it still become your finest form? A small plant leans toward the sunlight streaming through a high window. The monk notices. He places a stone beneath it to lift it just slightly higher. Sometimes all we need, he says, is a little help toward the light. You reflect on the people who've done that for you. A kind word, a pause, a gesture that changed your direction. Tiny supports, unseen grace. You may not have grown alone, and you were never meant to. If someone offers you a stone, will you let it lift you? The scroll on the wall reads, "Don't seek peace. Just stop avoiding discomfort." You stare at it for a long time. The monk says, "That was the hardest teaching for me." You nod slowly. Peace is not something added. It is revealed when resistance softens. You think of the ways you've run from silence, from grief, from restlessness. What if leaning in is the release? If peace is hiding beneath discomfort, will you meet it there? A cat sleeps in the sun on the windowsill, unbothered, unapologetic, entirely present. You watch it and feel envy. The monk joins you and whispers, "That's the most enlightened being here." You laugh, but also you believe it. No striving, no performing, just rest. Maybe the point isn't more awakening. Maybe it's more allowing. If rest is a form of wisdom, will you stop earning it and simply receive? You help carry firewood into the kitchen. It's heavy, uneven. Your shoulders ache. The monk sees you hesitate. "Don't carry it all at once," he says. "Carry it well." You shift the weight. Breathe differently. Walk slower. It helps. Not just the task, but your relationship with it. Not everything lightens by lessening. Some things lighten when we carry them with care. If you can't put it down yet, can you carry it more gently? You notice a vine creeping along the wall of the meditation hall. No one planted it. No one guided it. But it climbs anyway. The monk says, "That's how Dharma moves." Quiet, steady, wild. You realize that maybe growth doesn't need permission. Maybe the truth finds its way with or without direction. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need to reach. If truth finds you anyway, will you stop waiting and begin? You overhear two novices arguing. The monk watches silently, then asks them, "What were you protecting? Not what were you proving, not who was right, but what hurt were you shielding?" Both grow quiet, and you see it too, how often anger is only armor, tenderness beneath every shout. If conflict hides pain, can you meet it with curiosity instead of defense? A broom leans against the wall, unused, waiting. The monk nods toward it and says, "Tools don't resent rest." You blink and begin to wonder, how much guilt rises when you pause? How many times have you confused stillness with laziness? The broom still sweeps and still leans. It is worthy in both. If your rest doesn't diminish your purpose, will you stop apologizing for taking it? You find a lotus petal floating alone in the pond, not attached, not drifting, just resting. The monk watches it too and says, "Not everything seeks a destination." You smile. Some moments are not bridges, they are landings. They are enough. If this breath is all there is, can it be enough for now? A novice offers you tea. You accept. He bows. You bow. No words, just presence. The monk sees and says, "This is the highest teaching, receiving with grace." You feel warmth in your chest. You've worked so hard to give, but this letting in is its own sacred practice. If you are worthy of giving, are you also worthy of receiving? The evening sky is wide and gold. Birds move in formation overhead, silent, unified, free. The monk watches and whispers, "No leader, only flow." They move together, sensing, yielding, adjusting. No command, no control, just response. Harmony without hierarchy. Maybe you don't need to take charge of every outcome. Maybe you just need to listen, and follow where love moves. If harmony arises from trust, will you let yourself be guided? The moonlight spills across the walkway like a path drawn in silver. You walk it slowly, your feet bear your breath steady. The monk joins you and says some paths can only be seen at night. You walk side by side in silence. No lantern, no questions. You feel the truth of it. How certain understandings do not arrive in daylight, in clarity and answers, but in the hush, in the dark, in the surrender. The shadows are not dangerous. They are part of the shape. If truth sometimes hides in the dark, will you walk quietly enough to feel it? You find a cracked bowl left at the well filled with rainwater. The monk lifts it and drinks, then passes it to you. You hesitate. He says it still holds what matters. You drink, and you understand the bowl's crack did not disqualify it. It did not spoil the water. It simply changed the shape. You think of yourself, your past, your cracks, your regret, still holding, still offering. If the water is clean despite the vessel, why not let yourself be worthy too? A gust of wind knocks loose a branch, which falls in front of the meditation hall. You move to pick it up. The monk stops you and says, "Let it rest where it landed." You're confused. He explains, "Not everything must be fixed. Some things must be witnessed." You sit beside it. The branch is not wrong. It is not in the way. It is simply where it is now. You begin to wonder, what else in your life have you rushed to fix before understanding? If nothing is wrong, can you stop trying to move it? The sound of a drum echoes from the inner temple. You follow it until you see a monk tapping it gently, not to signal anything, not to mark time, just to feel the rhythm. You ask, is it a ritual? He says no, it is remembering, the heartbeat of the earth, the rhythm of your own breath. Sometimes sound is not for noise. It is to return you to what never left. You close your eyes, you feel your pulse, and you remember. If rhythm is memory, what are you being reminded of right now? A novice struggles to fold his robe properly. It slips, wrinkles, falls. He sighs. The monk says gently, "Even this is practice." The novice tries again. You feel your own memory stir of times when you thought spiritual work had to look graceful. But sometimes it looks clumsy. Sometimes it looks like trying again, over and over. If fumbling is part of awakening, can you treat it with compassion? You walk past the laundry line where robes sway gently in the morning breeze. The monk gestures. They are empty now. You nod. He continues, but they will be filled again with breath, with effort, with stillness. The image lingers. Emptiness is not absence, it is readiness. You begin to feel how often you fear the hollow places inside yourself. But maybe they're just waiting to be filled, to be lived, to be worn with love. If you are empty, can you honor the space as sacred? The inkstone is worn down to a shallow dish, barely enough left for one more scroll. The monk dips the brush, draws one final character, and then leaves it to rest. You ask why not refill it. He says because knowing when to stop is also wisdom. You feel that. How often you've kept going even past the point of meaning. There is grace in enough. There is beauty in letting something end with dignity. If there's nothing left to add, can you put down the brush? A novice lights incense but forgets to bow. The monk watches, then bows anyway after the smoke rises. You ask why. He says because reverence is not about timing, it is about heart. You begin to see intention does not live on a schedule. It rises when you return. Even if late, even if forgotten, you can still bow now. If you missed the moment before, can you meet it now with love? The temple roof leaks in the corner. A bowl is placed beneath it to catch the drops. Drip, drip, drip. The sound echoes through the hall. The monk listens and says, "Even the leak has a rhythm." You laugh. It's true. The imperfection doesn't ruin the silence. It gives it texture. Life leaks. It spills. It sounds out. And still, it teaches. If you stop fighting the imperfection, what might you hear instead? You tend to a plant wilting from lack of sun. You move it, water it. Wait. Days pass and slowly the green returns. The monk smiles. Care doesn't fix. It makes healing possible. You breathe into that. Your job is not to rescue every fading thing. It is to offer the right conditions and let life decide the rest. If your presence is the soil, will you trust others to grow in their own time? A paper crane sits on your mat when you return from walking. No note, just the fold, the effort, the quiet beauty. The monk walks by, sees your curiosity and says, "It's not meant to explain, only to bless." You hold the crane carefully. You remember not all gestures need words. Some love is folded quietly and left behind. If kindness arrives without explanation, will you still let it land in your heart? You ask the monk, "What is enlightenment?" He pauses, then touches your chest lightly. Awareness, here. Then he touches your shoulder. And acceptance, here. Then the space beside you. And love, even here. He says no more. And you realize it's not a thing to find. It's a way to see. If the light is already present, can you stop searching and start seeing? You walk past a puddle reflecting the moon. The image ripples with the wind. The monk stops. He says even the moon accepts distortion. You kneel beside the water. Watch the light shift. It's still the moon, just shaped by movement, just momentarily changed. You remember you too are still whole even when shaken. If your reflection wavers, can you trust the source remains steady? The monk hands you a tiny bell. He says ring it once before you sleep. You do. Its sound is barely audible, like a whisper made of silver, but it lingers. And in that quiet resonance, you feel your body loosen. He says it's not volume that matters, it's attention. Even the softest note can echo through the heart. If your practice feels small, will you trust it still has power? The night has fallen completely. You lie in your bedroll, listening to the breath of the temple, distant footsteps wind in the trees, the slow hum of the world. The monk kneels beside you one last time and says, "The teaching is over. The practice begins." He bows and walks away. You close your eyes. Everything you sought was always with you, only waiting for you to sit still enough to see. And now, you rest. Not because everything is finished, but because everything is allowed. You do not need to hold it all. You do not need to know what comes next. You are already in the middle of the way, and it is enough. If sleep is the final lesson, will you let yourself drift into it? The bamboo bends, but it does not break. You notice this as you walk along the edge of the forest, where a grove of tall stalks sways gently under the weight of yesterday's storm. Their thin green bodies arch low to the ground, but each one stands rooted upright, unshattered. The monk steps quietly beside you. His robe brushes softly against the wet grass. You see, he says, "The bamboo still grows." You nod but don't speak. He continues, even after strong winds. As long as the roots remain, life continues. You kneel to touch the base of one stalk. The soil is moist, firm. The bamboo doesn't resist. It simply yields. It survives not by defying the storm, but by letting the wind pass through it. There's a lesson in this. One that does not arrive like thunder or revelation, but like a quiet truth whispered into your ribs. In life you have known storms, emotional winds that pulled you sideways, losses that hollowed out your center, words spoken that rang like thunder, leaving silence in their wake. And yet, here you are, still growing, still rooted, still breathing. The monk shares a story. A young novice once feared that struggle meant failure, that hardship was a sign the path had been lost. But the master took him to the bamboo grove after a great typhoon. He said only this they bent. But they did not forget the sky. You stand again. The wind today is softer. The sun peers gently through passing clouds. A single drop of water slides down the length of a bamboo leaf and falls into the earth. And you feel it that what bends is not weak, it is wise. It listens to the world without losing its center. You take a deep breath, and for the first time in many days, your spine softens. You do not need to stand rigidly to be strong. You only need to stay rooted. If the storm has passed and you are still here, is that not proof that something in you knew how to survive tea that cools too soon? You're handed a fresh cup of tea, fragrant, steaming, alive with heat. But you pause, you wait. You speak with a novice. By the time you return to it, it has cooled. The flavor remains. But the warmth, the comfort, the immediate gift has passed. The monk joins you. Perfect things arrive, he says, but not forever. You nod, sipping what's left. And you begin to understand that timing is a gate to truth, not just presence, but readiness to receive. Some chances pass, not because they weren't meant for you, but because you waited too long to say yes. If the tea cools, can you bless it anyway and be more present next time? The brush that refuses ink. You're asked to help with calligraphy, but the brush you're given is stiff, dry, unresponsive, frustrated. You ask the monk, "Is it broken?" He dips it, slowly holds it with care, and says, "No, it's just tired." Sometimes what we label as defiance is exhaustion. Sometimes the tool or the self just needs rest. He doesn't scold it. He cleans it, rests it, returns it to the shelf. What in you have you called lazy? That was simply depleted. If you're not responding to life, could it be you simply need soaking, not fixing a wall left unpainted? You help repair a meditation hall. One wall remains untouched. You ask the monk, why not finish? He replies, some things must be left incomplete. That's how the teaching stays alive. You stand before the unfinished wall. It humbles you. Not everything sacred must be polished. Some lessons are most honest when still unfolding. You think of conversations cut short, hopes not yet realized, and how some truths live best in the middle. If something remains unfinished in your life, can you let it speak instead of trying to silence it? The gate that opens only inward. You walk past the south gate of the temple. It appears closed. The monk beckons you closer. You try to push it open. It doesn't move. He smiles. It opens inward. And just like that, the metaphor settles deep inside you. You've tried for so long to force progress, to break through, to press forward. But maybe the way in was never out there. Maybe it has always been inside. If the gate won't open, have you tried stepping back and turning inward? The sky does not apologize. Clouds gather suddenly. Rain begins without warning. The monk opens his arms and laughs softly. You see, the sky does not ask permission. You watch the storm roll in unapologetic, full-bodied free. Nature teaches you expression doesn't need excuse. The sky cries, and no one tells it not to. You remember how often you've withheld emotion out of politeness or fear. But maybe your truth has weather too. If the sky doesn't shrink itself, why should you? The flower that faces east. You spot a camellia blooming low by the stone path. Its petals all turn toward the rising sun. No one walks this way often. It blossoms without audience. The monk kneels beside it. It faces light, not eyes. You realize true growth doesn't need recognition. You can reach toward what warms you even when no one sees. That too is sacred. If no one applauds your blooming, can it still be holy? Carrying water backwards. You're asked to fetch water. On the way back, you trip slightly and lose some. You want to go again, but the monk stops you. Look behind. A trail of damp soil now nourishes dry patches of garden. You walked backwards into a gift, he says. Sometimes what feels like regression is actually unseen contribution. If returning feels like failure, what if it's just a different form of giving? The monk who spoke to stones. You see the old monk sitting for hours beside a pile of rocks, whispering occasionally, smiling always. You ask, what does he say? Nothing important, your teacher says. He just listens until the rocks begin to speak back. You laugh, then stop, because something in you understands. Even silence echoes eventually. Even what's hard can hold memory, wisdom, and soft truth if we stop talking long enough to receive. If you were still, could the world begin to whisper? The bowl was already full. You keep adding things, tasks, teachings, obligations, until you feel overwhelmed. The monk hands you a bowl and pours tea into it, then keeps pouring. The tea spills. You jump back. He simply says, when it is full, stop. Not all goodness must be grasped. You don't need every answer at once. Your soul, like this bowl, needs space to breathe. If more is not always better, can you stop pouring for a while? Silence after the last chant, and chanting ends. The room is silent, and somehow you feel more held by the quiet than the sound. The monk looks at you and says, the echo is the teaching. The stillness carries the depth, like how grief lingers after loss, like how love ripples after goodbye. If silence can speak, Can you stay long enough to listen? The spider doesn't rush the web. You find a web spun perfectly between two bamboo stalks. The spider is there still, waiting. The monk says it spun this overnight, but it caught nothing today. Still the spider waits, not in despair, just in readiness. You learn doing the work doesn't guarantee the result, but the work itself is worth doing. If nothing comes yet, can you still wait with grace? The pebble that sank willingly. You drop a pebble into the pond. It doesn't resist, just sinks, effortless, peaceful. The monk says surrender is not defeat, it's return. You watch the ripples soften then disappear. You think of all the times you fought the current. What if sinking sometimes means arriving? If letting go is what leads you home, will you loosen your grip, a lesson left untaught? A scroll remains blank in the library. The monk smiles. Some teachings are meant to be walked, not written. You think of your own unanswered questions and how some became clear only through experience. You no longer seek every lesson in words. Some must be lived into. If there's nothing to read, can you still learn the rope frayed from use? You hold a rope worn thin with age. It has tethered buckets for decades. Should we replace it, you ask? The monk shakes his head. It still holds. That's enough. You feel that. Things and people don't lose value just because they've aged, softened, frayed. If you still hold, are you not still sacred lanterns lit for no guest? Every evening, the lanterns in the outer garden are lit even when no visitors come. You ask why. The monk answers, because the offering is not about attendance. It is about readiness. You let that sink in. Your light is not wasted simply because it isn't witnessed. If no one comes, will you still shine the smile that needed no reason? You catch your reflection smiling softly without thinking. No joke, no company, no mirror trick, just a smile. The monk sees and says, joy doesn't always explain itself, nor should it. You think, what if you allowed that more, smiling not as reaction, but as release? If your joy arrives uninvited, can you let it stay? When the wind took the pages, a breeze scatters your notebook across the courtyard. At first you chase it, then you stop. You watch. The pages fly tumble lift like birds being set free. The monk stands beside you. Maybe they were meant to be carried, he says. You let them go. Not all things are meant to be kept. If your story flies from your hand, can it still belong to you? The bell that never rang again. An old bell hangs near the gate. Cracked, unused. The monk still bows to it. You ask why. Because once he says it called hearts home. You think of your own former selves, versions of you that no longer speak, but once mattered. Honor doesn't require function. It only asks remembrance. If something no longer rings, can it still be holy? Still water hides deep currents. The pond is silent. But below movement, life stirrings unseen. The monk kneels and touches the surface. Stillness, he says, does not mean emptiness. You begin to realize just because someone is quiet doesn't mean they are shallow. Still waters run deep, and maybe so do you. If your depth is not loud, can it still be real, sweeping leaves that return each day? You sweep the courtyard, Leaves fall again. You sweep again. At first frustration, then peace, then rhythm. The monk says practice is not what clears, it's what returns. You see, now the point is not clean stone. It is the movement, the breath, the grace. If the leaves return, will you meet them with love again tomorrow? The ashes beneath the stove. You open the firebox to clean out yesterday's ashes. They crumble beneath your fingers, still faintly warm. The monk enters quietly. We cook with what burns, he says, and warm ourselves with what's finished. You pause. The ashes aren't waste. They're what remains after giving everything. How many moments in your life have you dismissed once they were over, not knowing they still offered warmth, grief, love, even failure? They leave behind something soft, quiet, still useful. If the fire is gone, can the ashes still hold you? The path with no destination. You're invited on a walk through the forest, but the monk says there is no shrine at the end. You go anyway. No goal, just footsteps, just rustling trees, just breath. And slowly you feel it, the relief of not needing to arrive. Each step becomes complete in itself. Like a brushstroke that doesn't chase an image. Like a breath that doesn't prove anything. If the path leads nowhere, isn't that also a kind of freedom? The flower you stepped over. You return from the forest and see a crushed blossom on the path, the one you stepped on earlier without noticing. The monk kneels beside it and says, "Even beauty becomes ground." You feel regret, but he shakes his head. It nourishes now. You begin to understand even the beautiful once overlooked still gives, and you, even in your unawareness, are part of something greater. If you hurt something by mistake, can you stay long enough to offer reverence? Echoes inside a clay pot. You sit beside an empty water pot. The monk taps its side gently. The sound resonates low, hollow, lasting. Emptiness gives voice, he says, not fullness. You realize the echo exists only because there's space, just like silence in a conversation, or pause between two heartbeats. You don't need to be full to be useful. Sometimes what you're missing is what allows something to sing through you. If you're hollow in places, can that be your song when the sky was too blue? One morning, the sky is so bright, so perfect, that your eyes ache. The monk shields his with one hand and says, even beauty has weight. You think of moments in life that were too joyful to hold, moments you ruined with suspicion because you weren't ready to receive. Joy too requires practice and softness and humility. If the sky is too much today, can you let it in slowly? One feather on the altar. A child places a feather on the temple altar. No incense, no candle, just this soft, simple, weightless. You watch it rest beside gold statues and folded sutras, and somehow it belongs. The monk whispers, not all offerings must be sacred. Some must be honest. You hold that in your chest for a long time. If what you bring is light, is that not its own blessing? The last grain of rice. You scoop your meal slowly, but at the end of the bowl, one grain remains. You reach to wipe it clean, and the monk says, that one matters too. You laugh softly, but then you pause, because what if that's the lesson? That no part of anything is too small for reverence, Not 1 second, not one breath, not one grain. If there's something left unheld, will you turn back and honor it? The cup that refused to break. A porcelain cup falls but lands on cloth and remains intact. The novice gasps. Everyone freezes. The monk smiles. Resilience can be quiet. You think of your own brushes with breaking and how some days you didn't shatter even though no one noticed. But you knew, and that's enough if you've stayed whole. Can you honor the quiet strength it took? Light entering through cracks. A stone lantern is chipped along one edge. But as the sun rises, the light enters only through that crack, illuminating the inner chamber. The monk kneels beside it. Without that break, he says no light would reach the center. You touch the stone gently. You remember your own cracks, the moments you tried to hide. But maybe they let something holy in. If the break lets in the light, why seal it shut when you forgot your name? During a long sit, your thoughts go quiet. Then your sense of self blurs. You forget what you were worrying about. Then forget where you are. Then for just a breath, even your name disappears. You return gently, but you feel lighter. The monk says, now you know the self is not solid. You smile. You're still here, but something heavy isn't. If forgetting the self brings peace, must you always remember the rock that welcomed rain? You find a flat stone warm from sun, then clouds gather. The first raindrop hits and sizzles quietly into steam. The monk nods. It welcomed what changed it. You sit beside it, letting the rain hit your hands. You've fought change for so long, but maybe the stone doesn't need to resist. Maybe it just needs to stay. If rain is change, can you receive it even if it shifts your shape? The guest who never left. A traveling monk came years ago, then stayed. Now he sweeps the courtyard like he's always belonged. You ask the elder, why didn't he return to his temple? He did, she replies. You pause. You begin to see home is not place. It is presence. And presence is where the guest becomes part of the ground. If something unexpected stays in you, can you call it welcome the garden left untended? You pass the west field, once organized, now wild. Weeds, overgrowth, chaos, but also color. Birds, new life. The monk walks beside you. Sometimes nature knows better. You think of your own inner spaces where control has loosened. And perhaps that's where the wild healing lives. If it looks messy, could it still be beautiful? The sound of one footstep. You walk alone in the dusk. No bell, no chant. Just gravel beneath your feet. And still, the path feels sacred. The monk watches from afar. You've found it, he says. Found what? Companionship. And somehow you understand. Even alone, you are not alone. Your steps echo with memory teaching breath. If one step is heard, isn't that enough? The thread pulled from a robe. You tug a loose thread and feel it unravel, but the robe does not fall apart. Instead, it reshapes. Softer, lighter. The monk smiles. Sometimes what leaves frees. You feel that. You let something go last month, and maybe now you're ready to see what remains is still whole. If the thread was holding too tightly, is its absence now a gift, the ink that stained forever? You spill ink on a scroll. The mark spreads fast, impossible to clean. The monk walks over, and without hesitation adds a brushstroke beside it. Now it looks like a moon. It's part of the story now, he says. You feel relief and reverence. Some marks cannot be undone, but they can be transformed. If the stain won't lift, can you make it sacred? The teacher who said nothing. You sit with a teacher for a full hour. No lesson, no lecture, no scripture, only stillness. Afterward you ask, was that the teaching? He bows, and in your chest, something bows too. If silence teaches best, can you stop interrupting the wisdom already present? The day without practice. You oversleep, miss chanting, skip meditation, forget the mantra. You feel guilt creeping in. The monk simply says, then today is your lesson, and somehow that feels lighter. Even your missed steps are part of the dance. If absence has a rhythm, can you walk it with kindness? The tree that grew sideways. A tree struck by wind decades ago now grows horizontal roots, deep trunk, bent limbs wide, and still it blossoms. You stand in awe. It's not the shape you expected, but it holds more birds than any tree nearby. If your path twists, can you still flower the word you didn't say? A conversation ends. You held back something kind, something true. It lingers in your chest. The monk notices your silence and says, some teachings are born of restraint. You feel it. Not all kindness must be spoken. Some lives in the breath. If the word remained unsaid, did the care still arrive? The raindrop that didn't join. You watch rain fall into the temple pond. One drop lands on a lotus leaf and stays there separate, clear, unblended. It shines like a pearl. The monk stands beside you. Not every drop joins the rest. And still, it is complete. You think of the times you felt outside, different, untouched by the larger current of others' lives. But maybe solitude is not separation. Maybe it's just a different rhythm. If you stand apart, can that be part of belonging too? The fire that burned too bright, a novice stokes the hearth too hard. The fire leaps, then dies quickly. The room goes dark. The monk doesn't scold. He just relights it slower this time. Intensity, he says, is not always wisdom. You reflect on how often your own passion has flared, hot, fast, unsustainable. Now you learn to tend gently, to warm slowly, to stay. If you've burned out before, can you return with softness the mat that held everyone? You kneel on a woven mat in the meditation hall, old, frayed, well used. The monk smiles. That mat has known many knees. Yours are just one pair. You close your eyes and imagine the monks, travelers, seekers, sorrowful hearts. All sat here. All left something behind. Now it holds you. If the sacred holds everyone, can you let yourself be held too? The whisper that was enough. You pass two monks speaking softly. You catch only a word. Still, it stays with you all day, echoing like a chant. The monk later says, you don't need the whole sentence. Just one truth, and maybe that's how clarity works. Not a storm of insight, but a whisper that doesn't leave. If only one thing reaches you, might it be the only thing you needed? The flower that bloomed at night. You visit the moon garden after dark and find a single blossom open fully in the absence of light. No sun, no applause, only breath and bloom. The monk says some flowers need the dark to show themselves. You pause. Maybe your best parts don't rise in celebration, but in quiet, in solitude, in shadow. If you bloom when no one sees, is it still not blooming, a step taken without knowing? You walk a forest path and suddenly realize you don't know where you are. Your heart stirs, then calms. You keep walking. The monk later says, not all guidance is external. Sometimes the foot knows before the mind does. You reflect how many of your life's best turns came without full understanding, and still you arrived. If you don't know the destination, can the step still be true? The cloak passed down. An elder monk hands you a robe once worn by their teacher's teacher. Frayed, stained, heavy with history. You wear it slowly and feel not burdened, but blessed. This is not inheritance, she says. It's continuation. You feel that in your chest. Tradition is not weight, it is warmth. If you're wrapped in something old, can you carry it forward gently? The breath you didn't notice. All day you've been running, working, thinking. Then suddenly you pause, you exhale, and in that exhale comes a realization. I haven't really breathed all day. The monk nods. Awareness often waits in the body. You sit, you breathe again fully, and now the moment stretches wide. If peace was hiding in your lungs, can you return there more often? The monk who forgot his own teaching. A teacher gives a beautiful lesson, then the next day contradicts it. A novice asks why. He smiles. Because I'm still learning. You watch him bow, not from shame but humility. He is not diminished. He is human, and suddenly so are you. If forgetting is part of practice, can you meet it with grace? One bowl, one meal, one life. You're served a small bowl of rice and vegetables. Nothing fancy, nothing new. But you taste each bite slowly, and something inside shifts. This is enough. This is nourishment. This is your whole life here in your hands. If simplicity fills you, why chase more? The touch of a falling leaf. You sit beneath a tree. A single leaf falls, brushes your shoulder, then rests beside you. The monk sees and nods. Even that was meant. You wonder how many gentle touches have landed in your life unnoticed. Softness, presence, kindness. If life brushes against you, will you pause long enough to feel it? An answer that didn't satisfy. You ask a deep question. The monk answers with a riddle. You press further. He remains silent. You feel frustration, then slowly curiosity. Maybe the point wasn't to be satisfied. Maybe the space around the answer is where you soften, if clarity never arrives. Can mystery still be enough? The bird that stayed for winter. A single bird remains in the temple garden, even as the others migrate. You worry for it. The monk says some stay, because they belong to the stillness. You begin to wonder, what if you don't need to move? What if your presence here now is the journey? If others leave, can you honor your choice to remain? When silence filled the room, a group gathers for morning chant. No one begins. 1 minute, 2, still silence, and yet it feels complete. Afterward, the monk bows and says today's chant was silence. It said enough. You breathe deeply. Sometimes not doing is doing. If nothing is said, might everything still be heard? The scent left in the air. Incense burns low, smoke gone. But the scent lingers in your robe, in the hall, in your lungs. The monk says some presence remains long after the form leaves. You think of people, moments, teachings, gone in body, present in trace. If something has passed, can you still let it stay one day without seeking? You forget your goals. You wander. You don't search for meaning, and somehow you find peace. The monk says seeking is sometimes the veil. You let go of the map, and the road softens under your feet. If today you didn't chase anything, would you arrive more fully, the shadow that looked like you? You notice your shadow on the wall. It mimics, follows, moves like you. But it's not you. The monk whispers, that's the self you fear, always close, never real. You laugh, then feel it, how many fears are only echoes, only outlines. If the shadow isn't solid, can you walk anyway? The stillness you became. At dusk you sit for zazen, not trying, not striving, and something shifts. You stop observing stillness and become it. The monk passes behind you silent. There is no need to praise this moment. It is already full, already whole. If you are the stillness, what else must be done when the journey bowed to you? You walk the long gravel path one final time. The wind is gentle, the trees shimmer, the gate is open. You turn to bow toward the temple, but before you do, it feels as if the path bows to you, not in thanks, not in farewell, but in mutual honor. You walked it, and it walked you. If every step was sacred, can you bless it now and sleep? The echo returned softly. You say something aloud while sweeping the path, not to anyone, just into the open air. It's a memory, a confession, a thought you didn't expect to voice. And from the trees, from the breeze, from the quietness itself, something comes back. Not the words, but a warmth. The monk hears none of it, but he pauses beside you and says, even what you whisper in solitude gets heard by life. You feel it now, the echo is not sound returning. It is care meeting courage. If the world listens gently, will you speak more kindly to yourself? The door that was always open. You pass a wooden door that once felt intimidating, the old meditation hall. You avoided it before. You weren't ready. You feared what might wait inside. Today, on a quiet whim, you push. It glides open, effortless. Inside, peace, emptiness. An open window full of birdsong. The monk appears behind you. That door never locked, he says. Only the mind did. You realize some thresholds are illusions. Barriers built not of wood, but of fear. If the door stands open, will you allow yourself to walk through the dust that made the light visible? Sunlight pours through the temple beams, and suddenly you see it, dust dancing in the light. Thousands of tiny flecks you never noticed before. The monk joins you, whispers, without the dust, we wouldn't see the beam. You stare, so much effort to clear the dust. But maybe its presence lets the light become visible. So too, perhaps, do flaws illuminate grace. If your imperfections reveal beauty, why keep hiding them? The tree that listened longer. You sit under the old pine in the north field, lost in thought. Hours pass. You speak nothing, but you feel heard. The monk later smiles and says, that tree has listened for over 100 winters. You smile too. Sometimes you don't need advice. You need stillness, roots, shade. If something can hold your silence, can that be enough? The cup passed with both hands. You're offered tea by a novice who bows and presents the cup with both hands. You accept it the same way. The moment feels delicate, whole. The monk sees this and says reverence lives in how we give, not just what. You remember honor is in gesture, not grandeur. If you can offer fully, isn't that already sacred? When you became the bell, you sit alone in the courtyard at dusk. There's no chanting, no voices, just stillness, and suddenly, something inside vibrates. You feel yourself resonating like a bell that hasn't been struck but still sings. The monk says later, sometimes the silence awakens what the sound cannot. You've become the vessel. If your soul rings quietly, will you stay still enough to feel it? The step you didn't notice. You look back at where you began this path and realize you are no longer the same. Not from one leap, but from thousands of unseen, uncelebrated steps. The monk nods. The seed never hears itself growing, and maybe that's okay. If you've moved without noticing, can you trust your roots have deepened? The footprint in the rain. Rain softens the earth. You walk the path, then pause behind you. A single footprint remains. By morning it will be gone. The monk says, not all impact is measured in permanence. You feel that. Some presence touches the world for only a moment and still matters. If you only leave a trace for one night, can that still be enough? The monk who smiled at regret. You tell the monk a story of something you wish you hadn't done. He listens, then smiles, not dismissively but warmly. That's part of your path, he says. The step you wish you skipped led you here. You breathe. Maybe regret doesn't need to be erased, only honored gently. If your mistake held a teaching, can you thank it? The thread that tied no knot. You help sew a tear in your robe, but one thread won't knot. It just passes through again and again. The monk sees your frustration. Some threads are not meant to tie, just to hold things gently. You pause. Maybe not every connection in life must be bound tightly. Some presence is enough. If something touches you briefly, can that still count as belonging? The wind that rang the wind chime. A gust stirs the wind chime near the main gate. It rings soft, uncertain, but full of beauty. You ask the monk, why do we hang chimes where no one listens? He smiles. Because life deserves to be heard, even if only by itself. You realize beauty is not made for audience. It's made for truth. If something sings, can you receive it, even if no one else does? A leaf that didn't resist. You catch a maple leaf falling, not fluttering wildly, just drifting with the breeze. The monk watches. That one knew how to fall. You watch it land softly, quietly, without effort, and something in you loosens. Maybe surrender isn't collapse. Maybe it's grace. If it's your time to fall, can you trust the wind? The stone path was enough. You're asked to sweep the stone path, even though no one is visiting today. You do it anyway. As you work, you feel a strange joy, not for who will see, but because the stones deserve care. The monk nods. Sometimes the path is the guest. You bow. If no one is coming, will you still prepare with love the mist that hid the temple? One morning, mist shrouds the entire mountain. You walk unable to see more than a few steps ahead. You feel uneasy, then calm, because the path hasn't disappeared. It's just veiled. The monk says, sometimes not seeing is how we learn to feel. You keep walking not with eyes, but trust. If clarity is delayed, can you still proceed? The cloak you took off, a heavy outer robe, keeps you warm, but as the sun rises, you slip it off, and your body exhales. The monk says protection has its season, but truth is what breathes freely. You think of your own armor and how it's kept you safe, but also distant. Maybe now, it's safe to soften if you no longer need it. Can you let the cloak fall? A ripple made without touch. You sit by the pond, still. Then, without wind, without fish, without anything visible, a ripple begins. You stare. The monk smiles. Not all movement comes from the outside. You realize even presence has impact. Your being changes the water. If you touch nothing, can you still change everything when the answer waited for you? You ask a question. No one replies. A day passes. 2. Then one morning clarity rises in you, uninvited, unforced. The monk bows. It was waiting inside. You just had to become ready. You begin to trust that silence isn't withholding, it's waiting. If the answer doesn't rush, can you let it arrive in its own time? The bowl that caught the moon. At night, a stone basin of water reflects the full moon perfectly. You stare and forget it's not the real moon. The monk says stillness lets us hold what cannot be held. You begin to understand reflection doesn't mean possession, only presence. If you can't keep the moon, can you still cherish its light? The cracked floor beneath the mat. You roll up your cushion after meditation and see a crack in the wooden floor. It's been there the whole time. The monk says even what supports us can carry its own wounds. You feel tenderness for the unseen pain beneath your peace. You bow to the floor, to what held you. If the foundation is cracked, can you love it even more? The branch that bent with you. You lean against a tree exhausted. It bends ever so slightly, not much, but enough. Enough to notice. Enough to feel like care. The monk later says, some parts of the world move with us. Silently. You remember how often you felt alone in your pain. But maybe something always bent with you. If support isn't loud, can you still let it hold you? The mirror without a frame. You come across an old mirror tucked behind a shelf. It has no border, no decoration, just clear glass leaning against the wall. You look in, and for once you don't see judgment. No fixed shape, just breath, movement, aliveness. The monk says, when there's no frame, there's more room to be. You realize identity shrinks when it's boxed in. But here you are, simply seen, not defined. If you remove the frame, will your reflection soften the sound that stayed in your chest? A novice plucks a single note on a bamboo flute. Just one. It vanishes into air, yet you feel it echo in your ribs for minutes after. You turn to the monk. He says some sounds enter the body more than the ears. You begin to wonder how many words, gestures, moments have stayed in you long after they passed. If it still resonates, isn't it still teaching the space left on purpose? You examine a scroll. There is blankness on the left side. You assume it's incomplete. The monk says no. That's where the silence breathes. You begin to see not all space is absence. Some is sacred. What's not said, not drawn, not filled, gives room for the rest to matter. If you leave space in your day, will life speak through it, the teaching you forgot then lived? You reread an old teaching and realize you've forgotten it completely. But something strange happens. Your body already knows. You've been living the truth even without remembering the words. The monk smiles. Wisdom doesn't always pass through the brain. Sometimes it sinks directly into the bones. If forgetting didn't stop the learning, what else is already within you? The rain fell differently today. It rains. The same clouds, the same sound. But something in you is softer. The monk whispers, the sky didn't change. You did, and that is enough. Even ordinary things transform when the heart is ready. If today feels new, can you meet it like a gift? The bowl offered with nothing inside. You see a novice bring an empty bowl to the altar. No rice, no water, no offering. But he bows deeply. The monk explains he gave his emptiness. You feel your own hollow spaces stir. What if your lack isn't a void, but a vessel? If you bring only what you are, might that be more than enough? The stone that waited years to move. At the temple edge, a stone once blocking the path has shifted just slightly over the years. No one moved it. Time did. The monk says even stone learns. You place your palm against it. Maybe the parts of you that haven't shifted are still shifting, just very slowly. If it's not fast, is it still sacred? When the candle wasn't lit. One evening, you prepare to light the meditation candle, but the monk stops you. Leave it tonight, he says. You sit in the dark, not lost, not cold, just still. And you realize the candle doesn't make the practice. Your attention does. If no light is given, can you shine quietly from within? The robe that slipped off gently. You remove your robe after meditation, not with fatigue but softness. The monk sees your care and says release is most noble when done gently. You feel that. So often you've let go with anger, with force, but now with grace, and the letting go becomes holy. If you must release, can you do so kindly? The voice you didn't know was yours. You comfort a younger monk. The words come unplanned, but clear, full of warmth. He nods, breathes deeper, and you realize you sounded like your old teacher, or maybe like yourself, fully arrived. If truth speaks through you, will you let it? The bridge that didn't cross water. A wooden bridge spans 2 garden beds. No stream, no gap beneath it. You ask its purpose. The monk says sometimes the crossing is symbolic, and you begin to wonder how many transitions happen, not in geography, but in the heart. If the bridge has no need, can you still honor what it represents? The flower that died uprights. A camellia bloom turns brown but doesn't fall. It stands, still, quiet. The monk bows to it. Some lives end in grace. You think of things you've watched fade not with collapse but dignity, and how stillness in goodbye is its own blessing. If it doesn't fall, can it still be complete? The pause before you answered. A novice asks you a question. Before answering, you breathe. The monk sees and smiles. That pause is your wisdom, he says. You reflect the space between stimulus and response. That's where compassion grows. If silence visits first, can your words become softer? The offering made in silence. You join an evening service where no one speaks. No chants, no bells, only shared presence. A single flower is placed on the altar. Nothing else. The monk later whispers, "That was the loudest prayer." You begin to see sincerity needs no sound. If your love is quiet, isn't it still love, the offering made in silence? You join an evening service where no one speaks. No chants, no bells, only shared presence. A single flower is placed on the altar. Nothing else. The monk later whispers, "That was the loudest prayer." You begin to see sincerity needs no sound. If your love is quiet, isn't it still love, the softness you finally allowed? You walk slower now, not out of weakness, but permission. You used to hurry even in peace. Now you linger, and the monk nods. You've softened without collapsing. Strength isn't hardness. It's patience with the self. If you can go gently, will the world meet you gently too? The one breath you remembered. Everything feels chaotic. Then one breath brings you back. Just one. You feel it travel all the way in. The monk says, "Not all anchors are heavy." You smile, because in that breath, you've come home again. If peace waits inside the inhale, will you return more often? The fire died without smoke. You wake to find the hearth cold. No smoke, no drama, just quiet. The monk says some endings do not announce themselves. You kneel, bow, and let the silence be the closing ceremony. If something ends softly, can that be its own kind of grace when you stopped measuring progress? You forget how many steps you've walked, how many days you've practiced, and for once, you don't care. Because you feel stillness, and that is enough. The monk says progress is not always visible, but peace is, if you don't count it. Can you finally feel it? The light that came from behind you. You turn around and realize the whole path is lit, not from in front, but from behind. The monk smiles. Some light doesn't guide. It affirms. You feel that. The glow of where you've been is the blessing. If light follows your steps, was it always with you? The moment that asked nothing of you. You sit, nothing stirs, no lesson, no need to grow, improve, understand. Just this breath, warmth, ground, and the monk doesn't come. Because there's no teaching. Not now, just you. You rest in the one moment that demands nothing and gives everything, and it is enough. If nothing is required, can you simply be now? All teachings have softened. The lanterns are low. Your breath is steady, and the journey has arrived not at an end, but a stillness. You are not seeking anymore. You are simply sitting, like the bell that no longer rings, like the leaf that no longer falls, like the bowl that no longer needs to be filled. Your body knows what to do. The world outside fades until even fading becomes quiet. And in the last hush of the heart, there is no lesson left, no story, no should, only you, held, heard, here. You've walked long enough, so now let the path rest beneath your feet. Let the thoughts dissolve like mist retreating from morning. And if you're still awake, that's okay too.